Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are here. It is Thursday, May 8th. It has been quite the past 24 hours if you've been keeping up with some of the news. And we've got one big piece of news that we are going to get more from or hear more about in the next hour at around 10 a.m. Eastern. Trump will be live. And he's going to be live talking about, well, folks, we are getting the first trade deal today. At around 10 a.m., Trump will be live announcing in the Oval Office the first trade deal in this ongoing battle of reciprocal tariffs across the entire world. And as per the New York Times, it's pretty much confirmed from all major news sources, it will be with the United Kingdom. It will be with the United Kingdom. And that is why the stock market is very, very green. It turned very, very green around 12 a.m. last night. If you were up and you were looking at stocks, it was kind of hard to go to sleep because Bitcoin was trying to get to 100,000. You had Palantir get to 112. You had Robinhood at to 51. Nvidia was at 120. I mean, just everything was gaining momentum. And that's basically because it seems like we officially have the first trade deal. Now, maybe this is a sell the news event once it's announced. Maybe this is like, hey, all right, market momentum is here. We're going to keep compounding more deals. We got China deals hopefully coming soon, given Besant's going to Switzerland over the weekend. And we're going to be talking to the Chinese vice premier of their Ministry of Finance. But it does feel like we are starting to see a bit more momentum. And that's why we're green right now. Shout out to Elaine. It's her birthday. Bring on all the great news. Elaine, I mean, you can't be too upset on your birthday when we got the first trade deal hopefully getting announced. I mean, it's going to be announced. I mean, like at 10 a.m., we are going to get that first trade deal announced. Trump also tweeted last night that he will be making a historic announcement regarding the trade deal. So he says right here, last night he put this out around 9 p.m. Big news conference tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. The Oval Office concerning a major trade deal with representatives of a big and highly respected country, the first of many. The UK, we now know, is going to be that first country. So, yeah, happy birthday, Elaine. And not a horrible birthday present for the president to finally be announcing the first trade deal. We're green, folks. We're green. We're green. We're green. We're green. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We are freaking green in the pre-markets. I mean, look, it's even Google, which had a really ugly day yesterday, and we'll talk a lot about what's happening with Google. Google is back at 155. Google was at 149 yesterday. Google had its worst day since 2024. Hoodie, 51.65, up 3.32%. Tessie trying to break 280. SoFi, 1333. Amazon, this thing was basically at 185 last week, 191, up about 2%. Meta, back above, I didn't even know Meta was back above 600. Last night it was at 599. Now we're at 608. There you go. Palantir, 112. That was at 108 last night. Nvidia, I think it cracks 120. It was at 120 last night. It's at 118. We also had a major Nvidia regulation that was reversed yesterday around the diffusion rule from Biden. So we'll talk more about that because that was very bullish for Nvidia. You got Roblox, that's up. SMCI is up. Reddit's up. Eli Lilly's up, or Eli Lilly's down, but it was down a lot more yesterday based on an announcement that Trump made that we'll talk about. I mean, you have everything that's going green, and if it's red, it's very slightly red based on the idea that the entire market is happy that finally it looks like we're going to be getting a trade deal. The S&P 500, 4 points away from 570. 570 is around that 200-day moving average. If we can recapture that, that would be very, very exciting. 566 right now, up about 1% in the pre-market. And so based on Trump's announcement today, we're going to see if we can keep getting this momentum. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We got a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to talk about. Thank you, everybody, for wishing happy birthday to Elaine. Elaine is someone I actually met at the Bay Area meetup. So, yeah, happy that she's here. It's really cool to have met her in person, and she has a lot of Palantir. Let's just say that she has a lot of Palantir from $10, and hopefully she has a very, very happy birthday. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Kevin, Doug, I'm Beneficial. What's up? What's up? What's up? Rodrigo, Ultimate 10, Sanjay, Dragos. Good morning. Good morning, Matt, Travis, Lasso, Jay. We're gonna look at D-Wave. I know they had earnings this morning. We'll take a look at them. Shopify had earnings. They're down about, I think, 4 or 5%, although their earnings were not too bad at all. So we'll look at them as well. Gurja, Martin, what's up? What's up? Cactus Jack, Deneen, Sean, thank you, everybody, for being here today. Crowd Control, big, beautiful announcement. It's going to be a big one that we see at 10 a.m. Was UK the trade deal announced last night, or is there another one at 10 a.m.? So UK was not announced at all yet. It's just based on all the leaks. Everyone knows that it's probably going to be the UK. But at 10 a.m., we are going to hear from the president about the UK. And then hopefully soon, we're going to get a lot more. But UK is the one that's been leaked. It's not the one that has been officially announced, but we will hopefully get the announcement here today. Deneen, Soham, Uzi, what's up? What's up? Custard and Chips. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Zocold, Sean, Dragos. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody. Let's get started. All right, so I think the first thing we got to do is talk about what happened yesterday before we even get into everything. We did have Jay Powell have a meeting yesterday at the FOMC, and that was a rather important meeting in terms of what Jay Powell talked about. He basically said, the market asked him, hey, when are you going to cut rates? Jay Powell said, I don't know, and I don't really care, and stop asking me. I mean, that's basically the vibe we got from Jay Powell, which is that, hey, we don't have the data yet, which means we're not going to be able to tell you when we're going to be able to cut rates. And the market kind of reacted in a way that was just like, all right, whatever. Like, I guess we're just not going to know when Jay Powell's going to be able to make a answer to this question. So let me just play one clip from this, and then we're going to keep going from there in terms of all the other pieces of news we have this morning. But essentially, the market was relatively flat yesterday off getting, hyped and excited for Jay Powell giving the guidance that, hey, in June, we're going to get a cut. And unfortunately, he just didn't give us that guidance because Jay Powell himself is going to do. Maybe the trade deal today is going to influence how he thinks about the trajectory of trade cuts. He did even say that, hey, rate cuts are more likely if we get better trade deals because the inflation volatility will die down. But until we get more progress on that, we just don't know. So here's a clip of Jay Powell from yesterday, and then we'll get into all the earnings that we have today. And then we'll keep going from there.
Powell, thanks for taking our questions today. I'm Jolene Kent with CBS News. You've said wait and see, and the economy is doing fine today, but the impact of tariffs are already showing up at the ports. Businesses big and small are telling us that they feel it, and most importantly, consumers say they feel it, that the challenges are here, and there's no waiting and seeing. For Main Street, what is the breaking point? What would have to happen to prompt a rate cut specifically?
Well, so we really don't see in the data yet big economic effects. We see sentiment, there are concerns that higher prices may be coming or things like that. So they're worried now about inflation. They're worried about the a shock from the tariffs, but they really haven't. That shock hasn't hit yet. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the not just the sentiment data, but also the real economic data as we assess what it is we should do. And remember, there'll be two effects. One of them would be weakening economic activity, which translates into higher unemployment, and the other would be potentially higher inflation. Again, to say it again, the timing, the scope, the scale, and the persistence of those effects are very, very uncertain. So it's not at all clear what the appropriate response for monetary policy is at this time. And and by the way, our policy is in a good place, so we think we can wait and move when it is clear what the right thing to do is. Really not at all clear what it is we should do.
That is the summary of the meeting yesterday. His last sentence was, it's really not clear what at all we should do. And he didn't give us any guidance on really what the market should be expecting him to do. Labor market is fine. Inflation's not coming down fast enough. Non-farm payrolls are good. Tariff volatility is still there. And so the kind of word of the day in terms of what Jay Powell was talking about was uncertainty. And as a result of that uncertainty, it laid the foundation for him to basically not be able to tell us anything. And it was one of the first press conferences where I think everyone walked away with not knowing anything new. Usually we get at least something, some type of reading between the lines in terms of if he's dovish or hawkish. This time we got nothing. So that set up the foundation for yesterday's market, which is Jerome Powell basically giving us nothing and the markets were relatively flat. But then we got a bunch of pieces of news after hours that affected the markets way more than ultimately what the Fed had to say. And that's what we're going to talk about as we get into all these different headlines. Now, real quick, before we get into some of the Nvidia stuff that we heard yesterday, we do have two pieces of headlines right here that I want to cover. Coinbase is buying a company. We got that right now. That came across 2 minutes ago. Coinbase is spending $2.9 billion, 700 million in cash and 11 million shares to buy Deribit, which is one of the largest crypto options platform. I've heard of this company before. I've never used their products. Wall Street Journal, Coinbase has agreed to acquire Deribit, the world's biggest trading platform from Bitcoin and Ether options, for roughly $2.9 billion. Coinbase stock right now, let's see if that's affected. Wow, up 5%. All right, market likes it. Market likes it. Coinbase to buy Deribit for $2.9 billion, 700 million in cash, 11 million shares they're going to be using. This is crypto's largest ever merger and acquisition. So M&A season maybe starting to come back. maybe starting to come back. So there you go. That's some news on Coinbase. And then HIMS is down a little bit right now in the pre-market. HIMS right here is at 51.75. And when I mean down a little bit, it's, down about 1.15%. And the reason it is down is because the company is doing a convertible note offering of about $450 million. So HIMS right here announces a proposed convertible senior notes offering to accelerate global expansion and utilization of AI in healthcare. Today, they announced the intention to offer, subject to market conditions, $450 million of aggregate principal amount of convertible senior notes. Usually, this tends to be something where the market sells this off because, the market's afraid that it's like going to be dilutive, bad for shareholders, etc. I think this is not that big of a deal. The reason this is not that big of a deal is because, first of all, the stock is up 114% year to date. So, if you're HIMS, you're kind of stupid not to do a convertible offering right here. Your stock's up that much. You're not a company that it's like Palantir that has $6 billion in cash or Robinhood that has $5 billion in cash. You need the cash, right? And if you have the cash, you can obviously do a lot of things that can further advance the interests of shareholders. And if you have a float that's not as expansive, there's not billions and billions of shares outstanding, it's not the worst thing in the world to do a convertible note. Granted, the shorts will say, all right, this is, what we've been waiting for. The company was obviously going to do something with the stock running up. You can't continue to squeeze the share count if the share count grows with the convertible notes. But it's not necessarily something I think that's a bad thing, or it would be something that people should be scared about. And yes, HIMS also hired a new CTO. So they hired a new COO the other day, and now they hired a new CTO. And this CTO seems to be a guy who came from Amazon, which the COO also came from Amazon. Mo Eshleni is this guy's name. He was the global head of tech at Amazon for 3 years and CTO at Cruise for 7 years. So the COO they announced 2 days ago was at Amazon from 2005 to 2023, if I'm not wrong. And this new guy was at Amazon for 3 years, and he was at Cruise, which is a self-driving startup that GM had bought, for 7 years. Look, it's not bad, dude. You're starting to get a ton of people that they're incorporating into the company that have not only a technology background, but have an operational background. And so, I don't know, the convertible note and the short float, people could point to those as bear theses, but they're not really that bearish. Also, this thing was down at 4%. Now it's down 1%. So whatever red candle that was there, kind of getting eaten up and not being as aggressive as a red candle as it was, I think because the market's realizing it doesn't matter. Companies do convertible notes all the time. It's a difference if GameStop, does a convertible note. When you have a company that's growing 111% year over year, it's profitable. It's just it's a completely different understanding of why they're doing an offering. So I don't think that's that big of a deal. We'll see how the market reacts at 9:30. If people actually are upset that it's doing a convertible note, first of all, it's a capped convertible note as well, and they mature in 2030. So this one doesn't feel like they're just dumping a bunch of shares at the money immediately for it to dilute people. And if they were, I think the stock would be down a lot more. So seems like rather not that big of a deal. The bigger deal to me is that CTO hire, which seems to be pretty strong for their broader management team. They're building a strong management team ready for big boy expansion. Yeah, if they want to become the Amazon of healthcare, which is what most of the HIM bulls think they can, getting some execs from Amazon that have done it before, not the craziest idea right there. So that's what we got in the context of the HIMS. Now, also, we've got D-Wave. So QBTS, this is a quantum name. Before we get into Nvidia, let's just look at this. This one had earnings this morning, and they are mooning 26.85% on the day. Looks like they had a strong quarter against expectations. Financial highlights: revenue $15 million, up 509% year over year. They had $2.5 million back in Q1 2024. Net income $80 million. They are profitable. That's up 869% year over year. EPS is up 882% year over year. Adjusted EBITDA is up $6.1 million. That's up 53% year over year. And they have $300 million in cash. They did an ATM program a while ago, and they raised about $146 million as well. So again, GAAP EPS was 2 cents. They beat estimates by 71%. Or negative 2 cents. The market wanted negative 7 cents. And then revenue of $15 million. The market thought they would have negative 10 million. They ended up getting revenue of 15. It was a pretty damn quarter. It was a pretty damn good quarter. And that's why you're seeing the stock up here 27% on the day. Now, yes, 15 million revenue, 2 billion market cap is wild. I am not chasing this name, but if you're investing in any of the quantum stocks, IONQ, Rigetti, D-Wave, you really don't give a crap about the valuation. You are looking towards the future. You are looking towards what quantum will be like, and you kind of just want to be there and the best names before quantum ends up taking off. So I think anyone in this name or investing in this name or buying the stock right now, anyone buying it up 30% right here, does not care about the valuation. You care about the rate of growth. And you also care about the fact that you think quantum is going to be the next, you could call it internet level type of technology along with AI. And if it is, then there's going to be some winners. And D-Wave, Rigetti, IONQ, those are the ones that are probably top of mind for most people. So that's what we got on D-Wave, QBTS. Congrats to everyone who's in this one, up 27%. And then we got Shopify. So Shopify, they're down 6%. This happens to Shopify every time. If anyone has ever been there for a Shopify earnings, like this is a stock that has always been expensive. I don't want to say necessarily overvalued, but it's always been really expensive just because they command a premium from the market. They missed on EPS by 4%, beat on revenue by 1%. Any miss on Shopify could cause the stock to get down. 2 quarters ago, they beat on EPS by, I think, 3%. They were up 22%. It was like at $115. It was pretty wild. But Shopify is a name that's always been expensive. It's just you pay a premium for Shopify because you believe it is one of the premier platforms that is out there outside of Amazon for e-commerce. So this one is getting hit primarily because that EPS miss. I'm going to see if they had guidance that was worse than expected, but outside of that, it seems relatively strong right now, even if the stock is down about 6%. I wanted to initiate a position on Shopify early 2025, never had a chance to do it. So we'll see how bad this dip gets. And maybe I end up buying the dip right here on Shopify. Real quick, before we keep going into Shopify's numbers, we have jobless claims this morning. So let me pull this up real quick. Today is Thursday. We got a lot of data today. Again, that 10 a.m. deal with the UK will be announced. All right, jobless claims, initial jobless claims. The market wanted 230. We came in at 228. Not bad. Market wanted 230. We came in at 228. So again, jobless claims. This is another reason why it's hard for J. Powell to cut rates. If we are not seeing a massive slowdown in the labor market, and you really realistically need 350 to 375,000 jobs a week that are people that are filing for unemployment a week to say we are getting into a recession. That's not happening. It's hard for J. Powell to cut rates. Now, the counterpoint to that is that if you start to see that happen, we're too late to cutting rates. But the point is J. Powell is not going to be cutting with this type of data that's coming up. So initial jobless claims, not too bad. And that's also good for the broader markets right here. Shopify CEO, here's what he says. Our Q1 results confirm 2 clear facts. First, we are delivering both growth and profitability at scale. Second, businesses perform better on Shopify regardless of market conditions. We built Shopify for times like this. I'm assuming he's talking about tariffs. We handle the complexity so merchants can focus on their customers. We ship products faster than anyone else, giving merchants the edge they need to succeed. This is why I like Shopify. This is why I've always wanted to invest in them. I mean, they are just so product focused and they don't care about what's happening in the world. All they care about is making sure that their merchants get the best delivery of products. 27% revenue growth, 15% free cash flow margins. Shopify has now delivered double-digit free cash flow growth and in margins for 7 consecutive quarters. GMV of $74 billion that runs through their platform. Revenue of $2.3 billion, gross profit 1.1, free cash flow $363 million, and again, revenue growth rate of 27% year over year. Look, not bad. That's not bad at all. I don't see anything mainly bad on guidance right there. So we'll have to see why the stock's really getting hit, but it might just be because of EPS missing by that 1 cent. AppLovin is up 14%. They had a great earnings yesterday. They were actually down 15%. Then they were up 14%. If you look at some of their numbers, I was looking at a little bit of it last night. These guys print free cash flow. Like, I don't know what it is in their margins, but these guys, and I have no idea what AppLovin does. It's something with advertising. I've really never studied them. But they print money, and they're doing about $1 billion or $1.5 billion a quarter. Margins are amazing. 347 right here. I can understand why the stock got to 500 back in February. There's a lot of momentum around the numbers itself. But right now, it is up 14% in the pre-markets. Robinhood, 51.42. Meta's at 607. And then Palantir right here, 112.27. That's up 1.62%. Nvidia, 118.59. Let's talk about Nvidia. Let's talk about Nvidia. Toby is the GOAT of Shopify. I agree. I would love to interview Toby one day. I mean, that guy's story is just incredible. Amit, are you in any quantum stocks? No, I'm not in any quantum stocks. I just really haven't done enough research on the overarching thesis of them. But I think for those that are in, you're just betting on a future where quantum is going to be more important. And as of now, D-Wave is definitely rewarding you. IONQ also didn't have the worst earnings yesterday. I think they were down like 1 or 2%, but their earnings were relatively decent as well. All right, Nvidia, what happened last night? So when Biden left office back in 2025, January, he said, or he signed something called the diffusion law. And the diffusion law was basically this thing that architected chip companies in the United States, all the semiconductor companies, the main one being Nvidia, from not being able to sell to our adversaries. Nvidia, which tends to not be political, this is like one of the least political companies I know in terms of making statements. They put out a blog that day. I think this was 2 days before Trump got inaugurated. And they were like, hey, this is the dumbest thing ever. Biden has no idea what he's doing when it comes to this, and we should really seriously rethink this policy. I mean, they literally said Biden's an idiot without saying he's an idiot. It was one of the biggest blog posts I've seen from them attacking the administration. And again, Nvidia tends to not do that. It looks like Jensen pulled some strings with Trump. Late last night, it was rumored that the White House officials are reportedly getting ready to repeal the AI diffusion law launched by Biden. Now, this doesn't mean that Nvidia is going to be able to sell into China, at least not yet. We'll see what happens with negotiations with Bessent in Switzerland this weekend. But it does mean that Saudi Arabia, UAE, the Middle East, all these other countries that were blocked from being able to get those Nvidia chips because of whatever reason Biden thought they shouldn't be able to have those chips, it looks like there's going to be an exception made for Nvidia, which is why Nvidia is getting this momentum right now. I mean, Nvidia already, we know, is undervalued. If you believe in their forward growth estimates, it's trading at one of the lowest multiples outside of Google in the Mag 7. So the UK deal rumors that are likely going to be announced at 10 a.m., that's getting the market excited. That's pushed up Nvidia. And then the idea that Nvidia can finally sell back into the countries that they weren't able to sell for the past 5 months, that should be a tailwind for Q2, Q3 revenues. It shouldn't, I don't think, offset, the lack of $15 billion they're losing from China and $5 billion in Q1, but it should give them a chance to recoup at least a couple $2 billion of revenue, and that should be good for earnings estimates as well. Which is why Nvidia is currently up 1.32% right now. Some of you guys are saying the UK deal is a nothing burger. So I don't know what the UK deal is going to look like. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if it feels like a nothing burger. However, from a market perception standpoint, it feels like the beginning of hopefully a barrage of deals. And so even if the deal is not that important, and it's not that like big of a trade deal that does anything monumental, like we don't get any major leverage from it, it's at least the beginning of hopefully India, South Korea, Japan, and eventually China getting a deal with us. Now, CNN is reporting that the US-UK trade deal will reportedly leave the 10% US tariff in place. That would be a big deal. If we actually left the 10% tariff, that would be kind of against what I thought would happen. I thought Trump would get rid of the 10% tariff to be able to pave a way for a better trade deal. If we're leaving that 10% deal in place, I wonder what we gave the UK, what they got from us for us to not be able to get rid of that. Because, I mean, that to me is one of the first things the country would say, hey, can you just get rid of this? And then we'll give you whatever we want. So at 10 a.m., we're going to find out, what ends up actually happening. And, here's the other thing. Let's say we're leaving the 10% tariff deal, the tariff rate in place. That's where I think it could be a nothing burger if the UK says, all right, we'll buy like $10 billion worth more of your cars or something, right? Like if the UK is like, hey, we'll buy a couple billion more of this, that's not a deal, right? That's just like, we're going to do something to appease your ego. We're not really going to give you any meaningful leverage because you're still tariffing us 10% across the board. And we're just going to do this press conference to make Trump look good to keep our relationships up. If that's the type of deal we get, I could definitely see the market saying, all right, we're selling the news because this is not any meaningful type of deal that is going to make things better. Also, again, a 10% tariff on UK hurts inflation expectations. That's just not good. So in order for inflation to come down, my opinion is we need to get really good deals with companies or countries, but we also need to lower our 10% rates because that makes an aggregate rate of about 22% across the world. And, that's going to hurt rate expectations. That's also going to create more volatility for J. Powell. So from that perspective, we're going to have to see. We got about 50 minutes. We'll see what Trump says at the Oval Office. I wonder if the UK Prime Minister is going to be there as well and what they announce. But this seems like it's the first deal. Maybe this was the first deal that Lutnick was talking about. And hopefully it is not a sell the news on this. But as of now, the market is pumping based on the idea that this deal will be a relatively strong deal. So this will be a big one as we get into it later today. All right, cool. So that's what we had in the context of the UK. Again, we'll get more updates on that. Google, let's talk about the Googs. Google had a really ugly day yesterday. It was at 149. Right now it's at 154.85. Here's a recap on what's going on with Google and why the market is feeling a little scared right now.
Kovac, long brewing, I guess.
I mean, this is nothing new from Mark Zuckerberg. Let's explain what's going on here, because this all actually ties together. So what Mark Zuckerberg was just referring to here was that Epic Games case that Apple, the court ruling last week that said Apple had to allow payments outside the App Store. Apple, by the way, last night filed a request to stay the injunction right now, saying it's, this is an illegal thing, that the original injunction was too broad, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see how that goes through. We'll see if the court allows that injunction as an appeal goes through. No mention about these perjury allegations or anything like that. But look, that's one threat to Apple's business. The other thing that's going on here is what we learned yesterday from Apple's head of services, Eddie Q, testifying in that Alphabet monopoly trial, which it lost. They're trying to figure out the punishment for this. And one of the potential options is splitting up this agreement between Google and Apple, in which Google gets to be the default search engine on Apple devices. Obviously, huge risk for services. Eddie Q actually said this keeps him up at night. This is a scary thing that could happen because it's up to 1/5 of Apple's $100 billion annual services business are at risk here. It's basically free money, a huge profit center for Apple. And he basically said that what set shares down of Alphabet yesterday was that searches fell in the month of April on iOS. Now, Google kind of pushed.
That's wild. So Google pushed back, and we'll listen to what Google said against it. But I mean, for the first time ever, searches on their browser in Safari on your iPhone went down. That is a clear sign to me that LLMs are starting to take away some of the market share, and obviously Google's not going to benefit from that distribution if the default search engine doesn't get as many searches as before. Google again pushed back. We'll look at what they said, but if that's true, you got a world where LLMs are starting to get more prevalence now.
Back at that last night saying actually searches are up if you count other things like its individual apps and so forth. But this really played into the narrative of this existential threat facing Google, which is artificial intelligence, this idea that people are going to chatbots like ChatGPT and Anthropic and Perplexity to do their searches more than Google. And that really played into this theme that sent shares really falling. We're seeing a little bit of an uplift today, but this is a huge thing because we talk about this so much. Google has its work cut out for it to really prove that it can meet this AI moment. Right now, it's doing those Gemini overviews. It hasn't really been able to monetize that, but the search experience hasn't changed in the same way that we're seeing from these other players. So guys, we're seeing this real fear play out. In a couple weeks, we're going to get Google I/O. That's the developers conference that Google holds every year. Maybe they have some other ideas here.
Okay, so what did Google say to this? Well, Google said, we continue to see overall query growth in search. That includes an increase in total queries coming from Apple's devices and platforms. More generally, as we enhance search with new features, people are seeing that Google search is more useful for more of their queries, and they're accessing it via new things and new ways, whether it's from their browsers on the Google app, using their voice or Google Lens. We're excited to continue this innovation and look forward to sharing more at Google I/O. All right, so what's going on here? I think there's a couple of things that are important. Number one, I think it is undeniable that people are starting to use other things other than Google search in order to get access to information. LLMs, Grok, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Llama, etc. All that stuff is there. So it isn't surprising to me that Apple is saying that, hey, our search volume in Safari is starting to show a little bit of a decrease. Now, Google's adding up a bunch of other elements from the other parts of their apps inside of the iPhone and saying, well, if you look at everything in aggregate, search is continuing to go up. That's why they say we continue to see overall query growth in search. That doesn't mean Safari query growth in search is growing at the levels that it was growing at before. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think Google just needs to embrace it. There are a lot of parts to Google's business. I know 55% of revenue is search, and that's obviously something that's making people feel there's an existential threat to the company. But this is a company that has a lot of cash. They're going to buy back 70 billion of their shares this year. They have a lot of parts to the valuation, like a Waymo, like an Apptronic, that are discounted, that the market's not recognizing as an AI play, at least not yet. And there's other parts of the business like cloud, YouTube, et cetera, that it can be accelerated and accentuated in terms of how the market thinks of Google as an overall business. This comes down to, do you believe in Sundar? It's just that simple. Do you believe that Sundar is going to be able to do what Nadella did in the 2010s with Microsoft and completely turn around the business and get the market to respect the name, not only as a growth name, but also in this era as an AI name? I don't know. I don't know if Sundar is going to be able to do that. I do think that the market taking it down 10% yesterday was kind of stupid. I mean, like, nothing is confirmed right now. Google's not losing any of their search business. It's not like Apple's replacing Google overnight with Perplexity or anything. So I think, the market's being a little aggressive here, taking down the multiple this much just because they're afraid of the future expectations of what search looks like. I think you got to believe that there will be a world in which Google figures out how to monetize search, in the world of AI, how to make those AI overviews very powerful, and how to ultimately strike deals via Gemini and with other companies like an Apple to be able to make sure there is a framework and a way for AI-based queries and AI-based information gathering to still be prevalent and relevant in the world of 2030 and beyond. So I don't know, dude. I just think it was a bit aggressive yesterday. I'm still looking into this, doing more research, seeing how bad the court case looks like. It does look like the DOJ is coming after Google, and they really do want either a lot of money or for them to break up something. So Google's going to have to give up some type of a concession, whether it's getting rid of Chrome or getting rid of their deal with Apple. It's also horrible for Apple. Apple gets 1/5 of their service revenues from freaking Google. Apple's up right here a little bit right now in the pre-markets, but it's down about 7% over the past week. $20 billion a year they get. They make $100 billion a year in services. $20 billion of that comes from Google paying them to be the default search engine. So it's not good for Apple, not good for Google. We are seeing AI get a lot more disruptive. I just don't know if that means Google has to go back down to like $100. I think that would be a bit aggressive, especially with all the money they have to buy back their shares. So comes down to, do you believe in Sundar? Do you believe in Sundar to turn this ship around? Apple right here, 197. Google's at 154 currently right now. We got Meta at 607. Meta doesn't have this threat because, you know, although people say they don't use Facebook, I mean, Facebook is still used by billions of people across the world. Instagram, WhatsApp, those are just monsters in terms of advertising. So Meta not really feeling the same search type of threat. Palantir right here, 112.33. Nvidia, 118.72. Microsoft right here, 436. And then you got Grab at 488. Real quick, we got a new Grab update as well. So yesterday, it was reported by Reuters that Grab is getting very serious to begin the acquisition of GoTo by the end of Q2 and solidify it. Today, we're getting some more updates. GoTo will be selling off its entire international unit in Indonesia. GoTo will sell its entire operations except its finance arm to Grab. This makes a lot of sense to me because Grab already has GFin, which is their financial services part of the business. So they don't need GoTo's finance part of their business, but the ride-hailing and deliveries part of the business would be massive for Grab to be able to capture. That's like, you know, doing about $1 billion of revenue every year. So it looks like it's happening, folks. It looks like it's really happening. I mean, you don't get these types of leaks that are so specific that, oh, GoTo is going to give up this part, but keep this part in terms of the deal, if it wasn't happening or if the sources weren't legit in terms of being able to say what's going on. So I think it's happening. We'll see how the market reacts whenever it happens. It greatly accelerates my time frame in terms of how I thought the company would progress. I don't know if it's going to be a sell the news when it happens or if the stock's going to bump up. We have no idea. But eventually when it closes, I do think the business itself, regardless of the stock, is going to have a lot more trajectory to show 30, 40, 50% growth because they're just adding so much more momentum. And we've seen this with DoorDash. They started buying companies. We've seen it with Uber. The playbook in 2020, 2021 was acquire as many companies as you can internationally. So consolidation in the ride hailing and mobility sector of the market is very common. It's just Grab is stepping up right now and being a big boy and saying, you know what, we're going to take some of these companies off the shelf and just acquire them ourselves. So looks like that will be a positive update for Grab going into the summer. Hims right here, 51.61. They're down 1.4% on a convertible note offering. That wasn't that big of a deal. That stock's still holding above that $50 range. In terms of the companies that had earnings yesterday, so Carvana, good earnings. They're up about 6%. AppLovin, great earnings, up 17%. Symbiotic, decent earnings, up 2%. Honest, good earnings, up 4%. ARM, good earnings, bad guidance. They're down 6%. Mercado Libre, phenomenal earnings. Amazon of Latin America, just incredible, up 10%. Hopefully they do a stock split soon, but 2,477 on Mercado Libre. Oxy, decent earnings, up 1.7%. IONQ, decent earnings, up 8%. Axon, great earnings, up 7%. Fortinet, good earnings, but they decreased their operating margins. And that's why the street is a little upset. It's not even their non-GAAP operating margins, it's their GAAP ones. So like, I think it's a little aggressive to take them down 9.1%. Also, they didn't miss on their guidance. They just gave a low range and a high range. And if you look at the middle beats what the street was expecting. So not sure why Fortinet is down 9% right here. Although I do think there might be some cybersecurity slowdown because that's why CrowdStrike potentially laid off 500 people yesterday. So maybe CrowdStrike's trying to lighten the blow for earnings that's coming up. That's not going to be bad, but just not going to be as strong. And so you got CrowdStrike down about 5%, Fortinet right here down about 8%. And then you had Dutch Bros, also a great earnings. They are up 2.14%. This is a coffee company growing 30% year over year, which is not too bad either for Dutch Bros. Good earnings yesterday. A lot of companies are continuing to do what we've seen as a trend, which is beat on the top line by double digits when it comes to EPS, and then slightly miss on revenue, if not beat on revenue. So, but revenue is not as important. What really is important are the margins, the efficiency, and a lot of companies are continuously showing they have the ability to beat on those top line metrics. And I think there was like 7 out of the 15 companies we covered yesterday that had a double-digit beat on EPS. I know this quarter is pre-tariff quarter, but if you needed a quarter to solidify that we are still in a at least bull market if the trade war starts to die off, this was one of those quarters. We got Nvidia coming up to capital off on May 28th, but it wasn't bad. It was not a bad quarter at all, at least for a lot of these companies. VVV, thank you for the $100 super chat. I found out who VVV is yesterday. So this has been an anonymous person who's been giving $100. I found out who they are, and they're a really cool person. They would like to stay anonymous, but they are a really cool person. Shout out to you, Triple V. Thank you for the $100 super chat, and appreciate you being here and being part of the show. Sylvester Chapman, thank you for the $10. Sylvester Chapman, that sounds like a British name. Is that a British name? Sylvester Chapman. I'm thinking of like Charlie Chapman. That was a British guy, right? Charlie Chapman? Is that a British guy? Sylvester, dude, that's a hell of a name. Chaplin, sorry, Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin. Sylvester, dude, that's a hell of a name. Sylvester Chapman. Just feel like that's an elite name. So shout out to you. Thank you for the $10 super chat. And VVV, thank you again for the $100 super chat. Really appreciate you being here and being part of the show. Is VVV carp? VVV is not carp. It is not carp, although it is someone who is heavily invested in Palantir. Let's just say that. But it is not out carp himself. Speaking of Palantir, we had Palantir's co-founder Joe Lonsdale on today. Let's see what he had to say about Doge, and then we will keep going from there.
Have a big impact. I'm not as worried about that.
So, but one of the things he said, and maybe you can help us, is that he said that the folks who are running these AI LLMs, these large language models, were all in that camp, meaning that I think it was every single one of them was in the scary camp, and they're the ones who are actually doing it.
A lot of the people building the model companies are very optimistic that they're going to be able to keep making these things much, much better. I hope they're right, because we need them to keep getting better to have a really positive impact. I guess if you believe that it's exponential and they're going to get better forever, then it could change everything. I don't think these things are exponential. I think there's just a lot of other things we have to figure out before it changes the whole world.
Isn't it possible that we could hit the singularity with AI and we could all live forever instead of all dying? Isn't there a half full side of things?
You know, I don't think singularity is really how it's going to work. I don't think the world just goes in exponentials and completely changes. I think there's more like essence.
What about
so you get something
sort of a hybrid, you know, I don't know. We've been thinking about it, it's part hardware and part software on a human being.
Listen, the bio world right now, we're figuring out a lot of stuff about aging, and AI is probably going to be a big help there. I don't think it. I mean, yes, there are
all going to be, half of us are going to be dead, or half of us are going to live forever.
There are new threats where if you get crazy terrorists doing things in bio, you got to be careful.
Right.
But
Fauci?
Overall, that's a separate.
The reason they're talking about this is because Paul Tudor Jones yesterday said AI is going to kill all of us. And so when you got a billionaire investor getting really scared about AI, you got a lot of people questioning, what's going to happen in AI. I think there's a world in which AI can definitely kill all of us. I hope that doesn't happen. But logically, if it gets smart enough to think for itself, I mean, that is the conclusion. If you guys have seen a lot of these movies like the Terminator, et cetera, movies that I've watched from front to end multiple times, you know, like this is the stuff that could end up happening. So Lonsdale, very proud of Palantir, even though he's not part of their on the day-to-day mission. But probably one of the reasons why he's so excited about Palantir is because they can actually implement AI in a safe way, especially for governments, to be able to make sure that hopefully AI doesn't get so powerful that it ends up killing everybody else. Here's an update on the Trump trade deal. Again, at 10 a.m., he's set to go live from the Oval Office and give us some updates on this trade deal with the UK.
Tariff barriers, trade barriers, taxes, and the like. And I think the big question for the markets is going to be, what about those tariffs that are in place? The 25% aluminum and steel tariffs, and also the 10% baseline tariffs. Is the president prepared to announce at 10 o'clock East Coast time that those tariffs are going away, or are the 10% baseline tariffs staying in place? I think that's going to be important for markets, because this deal is the first one out of the gate and will set maybe a precedent for what we see with other countries. So watch that 10% baseline number today.
As you know far better than I am, and I mean, actually negotiating a true agreement is a technical undertaking that can take a long period of time. So I guess we all come back to what headlines will be part of this, and or at least as they move towards an actual agreement, which again could conceivably take months, if not longer, to fully negotiate and sign. I mean, is there a template for saying, all right, we're going to withhold on this, this, and this while we negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at the president's pause on his Liberation Day tariffs as a sort of a template for this, right? He announced something and then pressed pause in order to negotiate. Could the president pause on those additional tariffs? That's one possibility here, David. But you're right, these things take a long time. And the British government has wanted a trade negotiation bilaterally with the United States since the days of Brexit, right? So that's been years and years in the works. They tried to get a deal done with President Trump in the first term. That never happened. And so obviously negotiations have been going on for a long time between these two countries. Is there something that was on the shelf already that they could kind of take down, dust off, and announce today in order to clear the decks here from this tariff hangover and start to move forward with other countries? The Brits in that way may have been sort of the perfectly primed country to do this because those negotiations have been going on for so many years. So we'll wait and see what these details are. I'm going into the Oval Office at 10 o'clock, guys, to ask the president some questions. So text me if you've got some questions for me.
All right, we got 2 minutes until the market opens. Let's do one poll before we get into it, folks. The first trade deal looks like it's happening. Here's the question to everybody. First trade deal, sell the news, pump. What do you think? Is it a sell the news or is it a pump? We've kind of already pumped since last night. If you were up when the trade deal was announced, Bitcoin, by the way, where is Bitcoin? This thing was trying to go to 100 last night. Bitcoin, dude, I mean, it's kind of close, 99.4. We've kind of already had a pump is what I'm trying to say. And so maybe that pump gets sold off when he announces the deal, and the deal maybe is not as good as what people thought it was going to be. But if we go up further, then it's going to be fun. It's going to be pretty damn fun. So we got to see. We got to see today in about 30 minutes, which I don't think it'll actually start at 10 a.m. It might start at like 10:30 because they tend to be late. But later today, we will definitely know if we are going to see some pretty massive momentum here or if this is just going to be a basic sell the news. Dude, this AK media stuff, this stuff is not going to end, is it? It's just not going to end. By the way, shout out to Joseph Carlson. He made a video yesterday, mentioned me on the video about retail investors, and Joseph is just an awesome guy. I think I'm one of the only people he did a podcast with back in 2022. If you type in Amit Joseph Carlson on YouTube, you'll find the podcast we did. We were both talking about our contrarian picks, which was for me, Palantir, for him, Netflix. And he was really, really kind yesterday in his video when he was talking about the power of retail investors. So shout out to Joseph Carlson, a really great friend. And now we are getting into the market open. Thursday, May 8th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. Hopefully the bell wasn't drowned out by the software. If it is, I'm sure a lot of you guys would be excited. But here we go. Wake your ass up. 52.29 on Robinhood. The stock market is now open. 4.8% on the day. That's green. Tessie breaks 280. That's green. SoFi 1338. That's green. Googs is up a little bit. Amazon at 191. Meta at 606. Palantir at 112. Palantir looking like it's trying to get above that 112.80 level. Nvidia right here, 118. Again, that's up about 1% overnight, seeing if it can get back to 120. It was at 120 last night. Grab right here at 488. Roblox at $70 and 90 cents. SMCI 32.88. Bitcoin again, 99.4. If Trump says something really good, who knows? Who knows if Bitcoin cracks above 100,000 for the first time in over 3 months. AMD, are we moving? AMD is moving. 2% on the day on AMD. Again, a good earnings. They guided for flat data center revenues in Q2, which is why the stock went back down to 97. 103 right here on AMD. That's up 2.74%. Disney is up 2% after being up 10% yesterday. ELF is up about 0.32%. You got Archer right here is up about 4.16. GameStop's up 1.12. Robinhood really seeing some momentum. 52.18 up 4.5%. Let's look at HIMS. HIMS is down. HIMS is down. I don't think anyone can complain though. I don't think anyone can complain. HIMS was up. HIMS is up 70% this week, bro. So I don't want to hear any HIMS shareholders being upset about it being down 1.84% off the convertible note offering. It has been an incredible week, incredible year for HIMS. Currently right now at 51.33. Palantir trying to break above 112, trying to break above that level. I will check resistance at 113 and see what we've got. £4 it's at 112.78 right now. Meta right here at 606. Again, Meta back above 600. Nvidia 117. So Nvidia getting some red candles. Nvidia not being able to hold that 118 to 119 level. Even Robinhood getting a red candle from 52 to 51. This is a market where, look, covered calls can seem dangerous when you have moves like this. But then we've seen over the past couple months, these moves get faded, or at least they get faded enough for you to be able to roll out your covered calls without being indefinitely stuck in them. And so today at 10 a.m. when Trump makes his announcement, we're going to see how good of an announcement it is for the markets to really get excited, even though we're trading at about a 22 times forward earnings on the S&P, which is relatively expensive if we're going to have no rate cuts. And unfortunately, Jay Powell didn't signal any rate cuts coming for June. So we're going to need a really good announcement from Trump. We're going to need something decent to get this thing, I believe, to hold on to its momentum. But it's nice to see some of the green here right now. Tesla right here, 282. That one breaking above that 280 level. Where are some of the earnings from yesterday? So let's take a look at them. Bros is up 4% on Dutch Bros. Axon, amazing quarter. They make body cameras, up 11.3%. That one's doing well. VST, that's down about 1.3%. They had earnings yesterday that were not that bad either. Mercado Libre is up 8%. Honest is down 3%. This is a small cap. This one, it's not as liquid. So good earnings. 13% year-over-year growth. To me, is not really a growth company, but they did reaffirm their fiscal year 2025 guidance. So people will still buy biodegradable diapers without the tariff threat taking away from their sales. But this stock right here, down about 4%. AppLovin is up 12%. It was up 17%. So that one giving back a little bit of their gains. Carvana, they beat on EPS by over 100%. I think it's likely due to a tax credit, but they just smashed expectations when it came to EPS. Carvana, one of the best performing stocks over the past couple of years. Mercado Libre, again, is up 8%. ARM is down 7%. Their guidance was not the best. And then Oxy is up actually 4% on the day. Warren Buffett owns a lot of Oxy. Shopify, this one is now down 5%. Again, their guidance was a little light and they missed on EPS by about 1 cent. That's why I believe this one is down a bit right now. Dave, this is another finance company. I am assuming they had earnings and they're up 21%. Dave is a gem that all of us missed, including myself. If you didn't miss it, congrats to you. Dave is up 52% year to date. Over the past year, it's up 200%. And from the lows of 2024, it's up 1,000%. So this company, just unbelievably incredible. It's a fintech name. It's a banking name. Doesn't have a bank charter, but they do like checkings and deposits and stuff like that. They're up 20%. Looks like they had a really good quarter. Honest right here, down about 4%. Let's go to the Mag 7. These names are all green. Google at 153, Nvidia 117, Tesla 283. Tesla really getting some love right here, up 3%, almost making its way back to 290. Amazon 190 after being at 185 yesterday. Apple green as well, 197. And then Microsoft 439. Wow. That's about to hit 440 for the first time since August of 2024, which is definitely going to be very exciting for Microsoft. D-Wave, they also had earnings. We talked about them earlier in the day, up 23%. They beat on EPS, beat on revenue, kind of demolished expectations by over 400% on both of those metrics. Those getting a lot of love currently right now. Palantir, are we back to 113? Palantir, oh, wow. Never mind. We're very close to 114. I think we're going to hit that right now. 114. There you go. Back to 114. Back to 114. Here's the thing about Palantir. We've got to normalize triple digits. Remember when Palantir was 30, the first time it hit 30 back in June of 2024? And one of the things I kept saying was like, can we normalize 30? Can we continue to make Palantir feel normal with a 3 handle in front of it? And we never looked back. I mean, outside of August 5th for like 2 seconds, right? And then it went right back to 30 that same day. Like we never looked back after that. Are we done with triple digits to the point where we never have to look back on Palantir? I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical. I mean, obviously we got to take some time. We have an uncertain macro, but if we are done with the double digits on Palantir, would not be the worst thing in the world. Would not be the worst thing in the world. Robinhood right here, 5270. Robinhood trying to break through that 53. I think we cracked it for a second, but we weren't able to hold. Palantir, wow, going a bit nuclear right here. Looking like it wants to get 115. Either we're pumping into this meeting and this meeting ends up being good enough to maintain this pump, or this meeting's going to be a bit of a sell the news. We have to see. But so far, it seems like stocks love it. HIMS goes green. There you go. HIMS basically going green right here. HIMS not letting that convertible note offering get away from its momentum. Nvidia 117, Pinterest at 2796, Google again 154, Meta 610. This thing was freaking 480 3 weeks ago. Now it's at 610. Meta not really having those many search threats and performing like a company that is able to make sure that AI is attached to their name and that they get an AI multiple. 610 right here on Meta. Oh, OpenAI has a new CEO, by the way. Dude, this was the weirdest announcement of a CEO last night. So Sam Altman is still going to be the CEO of the company, but he said, I'm so excited to announce that the CEO of Instacart, PG Simo is joining OpenAI in a new role, CEO of applications, reporting to me. I'll remain CEO of OpenAI, but in this new configuration, I'll be able to increase my focus on research, compute, and safety. These are critical as we approach superintelligence. So she didn't make the announcement. He made the announcement. If you clicked on her profile last night, her bio said CEO of Instacart. So it's not like she resigned from being the CEO of Instacart. It was just so weird. It's like, why is he making the announcement for her? And why has she not changed her bio? Because everyone thinks, okay, she's still at Instacart. But yeah, she's the new CEO of OpenAI. So I guess we'll see what that means. I personally, my take on this is that they just found anyone that they could just put in that position so that Sam doesn't have to literally be accountable for like the CEO of the company, but he could be the CEO of like the parent company. And so he gets more time to focus on other stuff. Like he probably doesn't want to be on the earnings calls when they go public answering questions. So they'll get someone else to do that. And, he'll be in the background. Robinhood right here, 52.49. That's up 5% right now. Tesla, 285, breaking through that 285 level. And then Palantir, 30 cents away from 115. Let me check resistance right there. You're getting some momentum. 115 on Palantir is 77,000 shares. 77,000 shares for Palantir. Coinbase is acquiring a company, Deribit, for $2.9 billion. Coinbase right here up 4%. We covered that a little bit ago. I don't know much about the company. I've heard of them before, but I think it's not a bad move for Coinbase. I mean, they need to continue to expand their global dominance as one of the biggest crypto exchanges, and you kind of have to do that through acquisitions, which probably makes sense. Where is Bitcoin? Are we going to get 100K today, Bitcoin? I mean, dude, if Trump says something good, maybe there's a shot. Bitcoin's doing this, by the way, without rate cuts and without like the S&P being at all-time highs. So, I mean, shout out to Bitcoin. It completely defied expectations this year. Most people, including myself, thought it would get into the 50s and 60s if the NASDAQ were to fall as much as it fell. I mean, we fell to 2022 levels on the S&P 500, and Bitcoin stayed steady at 75, and now it's almost at 100. I mean, just incredible momentum on Bitcoin. And obviously that has also helped MicroStrategy right here at 409, up 4.3%. Up, Palantir above 115, folks. We got Palantir. We broke above 115. It just broke those 77,000 shares on Palantir. There you go. There you go. Tesla as well, up 3.5%. Wow, we are really moving today. We are really moving. I am hoping this freaking UK deal is going to be legit and it's going to get the market to feel at ease. Even Robinhood up about 5% right here, 5.2. But we're going to have to find out what this UK deal looks like. Tesla right here, 284.68 currently right now. Rocket Lab has earnings today. So I have Rocket Lab. So this is a quarter I'll be looking at, 22.32. That's up 0.18%. Rocket Lab not really red yet, but it's relatively flat right here. There's going to be crazy earnings after the bell, dude. After the bell today, it is going to be madness. We are going to have Coinbase, Rocket Lab, Trade Desk, Cloudflare, DraftKings, SoundHound, Transmedics, Marathon, Affirm, Monster, Pinterest, Toast, CleanSpark, HubSpot, Lyft, Serve Robotics, Wolf, Texas Roadhouse, Dropbox, Rumble, Sweetgreens, and Paramount. I mean, it is going to be a crazy day after the bell, and we're going to have a lot of earnings kind of show us where the trajectory of this market is going. Wow, Palantir does not care. 116 looks like it's on the way if we can hold this up. Palantir up 5% right here. 116 resistance is 28,000 shares. 28,000 shares on Palantir. Are we back to 53 on Hood? We are very close to 53 on Hood. I think we broke it for a second. It looks like it wants to get there again. Resistance at 53 is, 1,500 shares. So we basically broke it. So hopefully not that hard to get back there. SoFi right here, 13.14. That's up about 1%. Palantir again, 115.42. Nvidia, 117.54. Grabs at 487. That's relatively flat. Reddit at 106. Dell, 96.51. Let's look at all the other semis today. Nvidia and AMD leading the way. AMD actually up 4%, getting back to that earnings pump that it had. Micron's up 2%. Lam Research is up 1%. Dell's up 1%. Broadcom's up 1%. ASML up 1.3%. SMCI goes red. SMCI down. TSM's flat. Intel's up 3%. On is up 1.4%. And then Marvell is up 1.5% after falling 10% yesterday as well. Palantir also signed a deal with Ecuador yesterday. I don't know the specifics of this deal, but they announced that they signed a deal with Ecuador, and they just had a new PR right now. So this is what they shared yesterday. Palantir is proud to partner with Ecuador. They met with the Ecuadorian president, And then just now, Palantir is proud to partner with the Joint Commission to support healthcare organizations across the U.S. in benchmarking quality and improving outcomes by leveraging advanced data and AI capabilities. This news came out about 30 minutes ago as well. So you got two headlines along with the UK headline that's coming up that is relatively bullish for the broader market. There you go. Robinhood 52.95, and that's obviously very good for Palantir. Palantir 15 cents away from 116. 15 cents away from 116. Hims goes green. Hood 53. Nvidia, Nvidia, it's not really moving with the rest of the market. Nvidia right here, kind of flat. I guess Nvidia may be waiting for some more news, but this one not really moving like everything else. There you go. 116 on Palantir. 116 on Palantir breaks through. It's a hell of a move on Palantir, up almost 5 or more than 5% now on the day. Nvidia is flat. It's up 0.51. Amazon's up 0.82. Rock Labs basically flat as well. Palantir, just a nuclear candle right there. 116.29. I mean, I'm going to check resistance at 117. At 117, we've got 26,000 shares. 26,000 shares. Dude, this is pretty incredible. I mean, this is performing better than everything else in the market. So it kind of feels like it's more independent on Palantir. Maybe a bit of an earnings rebound, people buying the dip, something like. I mean, it is definitely not moving like the rest of the market, which is surging 5-6%. It's happening independent of itself. So we are getting some pretty serious momentum right here. Verizon is flat. Archer is up about 1.29%. GameStop's up 1.5%, and then Hoodie 52.85. Not really holding on to 53, but cracked it a couple times on the day. Now, gold prices are slightly down. So gold was at 3,500 on Monday. Now it's down about 0.58%. It spiked on Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon when the India-Pakistan stuff started breaking out. But then when we had the Besant going to Switzerland to meet with China stuff, then people started selling gold and getting back into the markets. So gold not really selling off that aggressively, but it's not at those all-time highs that it was at when it was 3,500 just a couple of days ago. Bitcoin right here also getting some momentum, and Bitcoin also is helping Hood right now. Bitcoin 99.3 currently on the day. AMD is at 105. 105. Look at that. Not bad. By the way, there's another update on Robinhood. This leaked last night from Bloomberg. We don't know if it's true yet, but Bloomberg is reporting that by this summer, Robinhood wants to unveil a new platform that allows people in Europe to buy stocks on the blockchain. Vlad's been talking about this a lot, this idea of tokenizing the overall market. I've personally felt that they might be a little bit far away from being able to do that. It seems like Bloomberg's reporting that this summer, and guess what? This summer, they're having a crypto event in Europe. It seems like maybe that's the big announcement, that they're going to be using a level 2 layer blockchain, either Solana or another one that they mentioned, to be able to launch the ability to buy AMD, for example, if you're in France, on Robinhood without having to be connected to a brokerage. If they announce that, bro, I mean, first of all, you got crypto volumes that are going to go through the roof. You've got hundreds of thousands of people that would be interested to be able to buy stocks in a tokenized way. And you've got the first set of innovation coming from any fintech that's actually being able, Symbiotic, by the way, up 10.6%. They had a great earnings yesterday as well, to be able to truly bring democratized finance to anyone in the world if they have access to a crypto address. So if they do that, I mean, that would be massive. I don't know if they're going to do that. I kind of think that's the announcement, though. Like, why would Bloomberg leak that? And why would they say it's about Europe? And then why would they say the announcement's coming soon this summer when Robinhood has an event in Europe this summer that is all based around crypto? Vlad said a couple weeks ago that he was feeling giddy when he heard what his crypto team was working on for their crypto event in the summer. I would get pretty giddy if they figured out a way to be able to buy Palantir on the blockchain. So, I mean, look, if they end up doing that, this company is going to get re-rated from the entire market, and they are going to be seen as a true innovator in the space. And it would be very, very, very exciting for the company. AMD right here at 105, Palantir right here 116, and then Robinhood right here 52.69. Let's get an update on AMD and Nvidia and see what some of their CEOs are saying around China. We got the Trump announcement probably in about 20 minutes around the UK trade deal.
trying to create business for U.S.-based companies. And also this other piece of the debate, which is the company suggesting, look, China's going to get there anyway, or close enough, and it may be counterproductive to withhold, specific generations of products when it's not necessarily going to preserve an advantage for the U.S.
Correct. And not to mention other markets, and that gets to this diffusion rule as well, where conceivably NVIDIA's ability to sell into those markets, AMD's as well, may have been prevented to a certain extent. Not Huawei, which is more and more becoming a competitor at the lower to mid end. By the way, I know that Jensen Huang told the president, from what I understand,
skeptical sentiment to kind of burn off, but the retail trade, as I keep pointing out, has been hyperactive again. So, we're caught in this somewhat comfortable spot. I've been watching for the rotations, and they've been pretty back in gear, I would say. And you have the VIX actually dipping below 23. So it's trying to normalize as, again, we're in this window, this interregnum, but sort of between when we know what the details are and what the economic effects are going to be.
And again, retail's been buying the dip. Retail has been buying the dip. Here's that update on Robinhood, by the way, from Bloomberg. Robinhood is developing a blockchain-based platform that will allow retail investors in Europe to trade U.S. securities such as stocks, according to two people familiar with the matter. The venture will likely be launched through a partnership with a digital asset firm, according to the people. Arbitrum, a blockchain that is overlaid on Ethereum, and Solana, another popular blockchain, have both been under consideration for the partnership. Discussions are still ongoing. A spokesperson for Menlo Park-based Robinhood declined to comment. Off-Chain Labs, the developer of Arbitrum blockchain, and Solana Foundation, the nonprofit behind Solana blockchain, both did not respond to comments either. So, look, usually when you don't respond to comments, it's probably because there's something going on. So that would be pretty cool, dude. That would be pretty freaking cool if Robinhood can launch an entire blockchain to buy stocks in the summer for people across the world. And it would definitely be something that would be pretty innovative and at the forefront of what's happening in financial services. Pounty right here, 115.41. Did Nvidia go red? Nvidia went red. Nvidia went red. This is why covered calls on Nvidia are working this year. I mean, it's just not having that explosive breakout that I think the street wants to see. Remember, there's still a bunch of headwinds for Nvidia, including losing the China revenue, including the UAE and Saudi Arabia, Middle Eastern revenue that hasn't been repealed yet. Last night, it's pumping on the news that, hey, they're going to repeal the diffusion law, but we haven't heard any update from the administration yet. And then on top of that, you've got general market volatility around export controls that could create a little bit of hesitation for certain companies or countries or hyperscalers to want to commit even more to their spend in 2026, even if they are committing in 2025. So those are the headwinds. I think those are relatively minuscule headwinds that we can look past, but they are significant enough that they're not going to take Nvidia back to all-time highs. It's just not happening anytime soon, in my opinion. And if it does, I'd be very happy, but I don't think that's happening yet. Because if Nvidia goes to all-time highs, all the semis have to pump with it. There's no way Nvidia is pumping and the rest of the semiconductors are going to be flat. So I think it's an accumulation year for Nvidia, or at least an accumulation next 4 or 5 months for Nvidia, and eventually it'll get its breakout if we get a Santa Claus rally towards the end of the year. But we're going to have to see how the market ultimately interprets it. AMD right here at 104, Bitcoin at 99,191, Tesla 283. We're getting red candles across the board. Getting some red candles across the board now, which is fair. We had a nice little pump as soon as the market opened. There you go. Tesla topped out at around 287, now back at 283. Hoodie, same thing. We got to 53, back to 51.95. Palantir, we got to 116. Palantir at 115.40, so that one not getting hit too bad, but we do have red candles coming out across the board. Let me check if the White House has this if they have this live stream up and ready. And we're going to see if they're going to make this announcement with the UK. I also wonder, yeah, it's ready for 10 a.m. I wonder if the prime minister in the UK is going to be here. I wonder if he's going to be here. Or is this just going to be Trump with some like trade officials? We're going to have to see. We're going to have to see. Amid, you were asking about the new CEO of OpenAI. She was part of the OpenAI board. She made a detailed post on LinkedIn today. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know she was part of the OpenAI board. Okay, that makes, I mean, that's a more natural transition, right? If she was already on the board of OpenAI. Regardless, I think they want someone other than Sam Altman having to deal with the media, right? Because if he's not literally the CEO, then as a result, he doesn't have to answer all the questions, doesn't have to be in the limelight. He can, probably focus on stuff that matters more than doing the basic stuff that a CEO does. I would know, given I'm CEO of AK Media, so I know we have to do a bunch of things every day. But it looks like they are kind of transitioning him to be more of a management leadership role than the day-to-day CEO of operations. Okay, so Eli Lilly is down because, so remember Trump said he's going to have this earth-shattering announcement? Apparently, Politico reported the earth-shattering announcement is going to be Trump announcing caps on drug prices that governments have to pay across the world. So basically, there's going to be a cap on Medicare drug pricing, and it's going to be a universal across governments across the world that are going to have to be buying drugs from the United States. There's going to be a certain cap that they have to pay. That's not good for Eli Lilly or any of the pharmaceuticals because obviously they're not going to be able to get as much revenue. Pfizer right here is down about 1% as well from governments that were acquiring their drugs before. Again, that's just a rumor. That's not confirmed yet, but based on that rumor that Politico reported yesterday, that's why you got Eli Lilly right here down about 4.6%. Same thing with Novo Nordisk. Hims, it wasn't really affected by that. I mean, Hims kind of got through that. Hims right here down about 1.4%. I don't think Hims is necessarily subject to it as aggressively, given they're not literally developing the next generation of drugs like some of these pharmaceutical companies, but Eli Lilly is, and that's why it's down about 5% here right now. So that's what we got on Eli Lilly. All right, what else? What else do we see that we've got right now? Greg, thank you for the $20 super chat. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for the $20 super chat, and thank you for being here and being part of the show. And then, thank you for the $20 super chat. Have you spoke about ASST at Vivek's fund going public via reverse merger? Vivek has a fund going public, really? Asset entities up 55% today. Vivek is coming back to the public markets? Really? I did not know that. I will look into it. Vivek Strive Asset Management is doing a reverse merger to come back via a SPAC in the public market. Well, what is the SPAC going to hold? Oh, is this a Bitcoin treasury? Holy crap, it's a Bitcoin treasury. Vivek Strike is building a Bitcoin war chest with NASDAQ-listed Arsenal. Strive has sealed a definitive NASDAQ-listed merger with asset entities to launch the first public Bitcoin treasury manager, which would be a new chapter in crypto finance. Okay, if this is accurate, there you go. Vivek Ramaswamy, former presidential candidate, is bringing a Bitcoin treasury to the public markets. Again, the thing I found out yesterday, which I just couldn't believe it. Cantor Equity Partners, by the way, up 5%. Cantor Fitzgerald's fund, 40% of it is in MicroStrategy. 40% of Lutnick's fund, which I don't know how many AUM they have, but I think it's a couple billion, is in MicroStrategy. I mean, I just could not believe this yesterday. So you got someone who has the ear of the president, who's, has a pretty heavy incentive to make sure that Bitcoin doesn't go down, because then MicroStrategy would go down. He's also got AMD, he's got Nvidia, he's got Rumble, he's got iBit, he's got Tesla. But MicroStrategy, 40% of the fund, Cantor Fitzgerald, again, is the sponsor of Cantor Equity Partners, which is another Bitcoin holding company. It looks like you've got people in the White House that are going to make sure Bitcoin does well. And if you own Robinhood, I mean, that's good for Hood. Even though Hood doesn't own Bitcoin, Bitcoin gets a lot of transaction volumes on Robinhood and Coinbase. They're the biggest platforms in the world, or they're the biggest platforms, at least in the United States, outside of Binance and some of the other ones that are getting a lot of these crypto volumes. Palantir back to 116. So any Bitcoin momentum is very good for Robinhood. Palantir 116.15 currently back up to those levels here right now. Oh, Kathy sold some Palantir. Okay, let's talk about that. So Kathy made a swap yesterday. It was kind of weird, but I also understand why she did it. Kathy sold the majority of her Nvidia in 2022, literally in October. So it was the bottom. Now, having said that, Kathy bought Nvidia back in 2014. So although she sold in 2022 before ChatGPT went nuclear, she made a lot of money because she bought it at like, I don't know, like 50 cents or whatever in 2014 when, no one really knew about Nvidia. But she did end up selling before Nvidia went on to do a 10x. Yesterday, she sold 350,000 shares of Palantir. She bought 114,000 shares of AMD, and she bought 107,000 shares of Nvidia. Now, what's really weird about this is that if you've listened to Kathy talk about the AI revolution, the number one thing she says is that she believes that the hardware plays around AI are going to become commodities that don't matter as much, and the software generation, the software derivatives of AI and the AI revolution are going to be where all the value is. And she's largely been right about that. I mean, Nvidia's done well, but Palantir has done very well because the market has kind of shifted a lot of their demand in terms of wanting to have exposure to AI towards the software plays.
Yesterday, she did the opposite. She sold her Palantir, which I don't blame her. I mean, she bought it at 12 in May of 2023, right? So she's up a lot of it. Maybe you have to rebalance. But then she bought Nvidia. I don't blame the Nvidia buy either. I think that's a great buy, but it is a 180 from what she said a year ago, which is the reason they sold out of their Nvidia. I mean, they were asked a lot about this because Nvidia went up 10x after they sold in 2022. And every time they were asked about it, they were like, why'd you sell? And Brett Winton, the chief futurist at ARK, was just like, hey, like Nvidia is not the future. The future is software. Well, looks like maybe they think Nvidia is the future if they're getting back to buying Nvidia. So kind of a weird change is kind of, change in her tone here, but it looks like she's getting more bullish on the hardware plays because even she's probably realizing, look, like if we're going to have an AI revolution, Nvidia is going to be part of that revolution. Tempest right here. That's another big Kathy stock and Pelosi stock. That's up 5.8%. Amazon at 190. And then HIMS is at 51.94. That's basically flat currently on the day. Palantir trying to go for 117, 116.50. 117 has 27,000 shares waiting to see if it can get there. 27,000 shares waiting to see if it can get there. Thank you to EH for the 10 Swiss francs. I appreciate that. Congratulations, Amit, on the Bloomberg interview. Glad I found this channel. You did a great job on behalf of the retail community. Greetings from Switzerland. EH, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the 10 Swiss francs. I knew that CHF was a Swiss franc because I'm very knowledgeable about the international community, because on this channel we have a very large international community. It's not like I opened up another tab and quickly typed in CHF to figure out what that stands for, but I really appreciate you being here. And I hope that Switzerland is going to create a very friendly environment for Mr. Vice Premier of China and Scott Bessent to be able to be some adults and get in a room together and start some trade deals. So thank you for being here, and hopefully Switzerland has some good chocolate to get these guys to be calm and relaxed and get a damn deal done, because it's time to get a damn deal done when it comes to China. But EH, appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you everybody for the love on the Bloomberg interview. It was really fun. It was awesome. I think I've watched it like 30 times at this point, just trying to reflect and see, how was it? How does it feel? And, I'm pretty harsh on myself, but I think it was okay. I think it was a decent interview, and hopefully we get to do a lot more of them into the future. So I really, really appreciate everyone's love. And yeah, I think it was a good segment, and hopefully we get to do a lot more of them in terms of the mainstream world when it comes to media. Shopify the president is on CNBC. We got Trump on in about a couple minutes. Let's see what Shopify has to say, and then we will get to Trump to make this UK trade deal announcement.
Results, even in an uncertain market, revenue was up 27% to $2.4 billion. Free cash flow margin hit 15%, and it was our 7th consecutive quarter of GMV growth above 20%, which I think speaks to how well merchants are doing. So my hope is that it should be pretty obvious to everyone that Shopify can balance both growth and profitability. But as you're sort of alluding to, Carl, in a very unpredictable market, this is sort of where Shopify's superpower of agility really comes into play. We built this business model that allows us to really adapt very quickly and pull the right levers. And for the millions of retailers on Shopify that have built their entire businesses on us, I don't think we're just a tool for them. I think we're a huge advantage. In fact, I first came on the show like 10 years ago at the IPO. So it's been about 40 quarters now. And actually, if you look since that time, since the IPO, since 2015, the growth rates of 38 out of 39 quarterly cohorts of merchants on Shopify have actually outperformed the overall e-commerce market.
You talk about me speaking fast. I mean, come on, bro. This guy does not waste a second on CNBC to explain why the stock should not be down 5% right here. But Harley Finkelstein, I have not DCA'd into Shopify. It's always one of those stocks where I think you can buy it and sleep well at night for the next 10 years. So I'm going to look deeply into these earnings. But always when I listen to Harley Finkelstein speak, I get more confidence that this guy knows what he's doing and they actually care about the merchants on their platform.
So I think especially in tough times, businesses are just better on Shopify.
Can you talk? You mentioned this on the call. These tools you have that allow merchants to achieve compliance with even new tariff announcements as they're announced.
Yeah. Look, as I said, Shopify was built for times like this. We've been at this for 20 years now, for 2 decades. So whether it was 2008 or during the pandemic or right now, our objective, our mission is to shoulder complexity so our merchants don't have to. And I think our velocity and pace of innovation is unmatched. So for our merchants right now, that means giving them all the tools they need to adapt to tariff changes or macro changes. And so whether it's building tools like duties calculation to help with cross-border payments, we built a buy local filter over a weekend when the tariffs were first announced to allow consumers to buy directly from merchants in their countries, manage markets, or even things like, duty collection, how to display and collect duties during checkout. Our job is to give merchants every tool they need, to give them all this optionality, and let them choose the ones they need to best address these macro changes and this tariff environment.
Harley, in terms of, you did have some comments about the consumer and how the merchants you serve seem to be perhaps better.
Okay, Trump is not live yet. I will switch when he gets live. Is him squeezing? Hims? My goodness, dude. Holy moly. Look, here's the thing about Hims. Here's the thing about Hims. If they are still 30% short, this stock's going higher. This stock is going higher. If this thing is still 30% short, AKA in the past 2 weeks, the shorts have not covered, or maybe it's like, 27% short if they covered about 5%, this stock's going higher. I mean, it's going to be really hard to see this thing not continue the pump based on those earnings, unless you get some really bad macro-driven news events, which could be the UK deal that maybe is a sell the news. Maybe they do more convertible debt offerings, whatever it is. But outside of that, if it's not going to tank off of a convertible note offering for $450 million that was announced this morning, which in all fairness, it probably shouldn't tank on that. But if that's not enough of a, kind of bad mainstream headline to take it down, and it's still squeezing after being up 70% this week, I feel like it's going higher. It hit 70 back in February, and that really was a squeeze as well. And then the whole market fell. So if it continues to get squeezed, then I think there's shot 54. There you go. Broke 54. I mean, it looks like Hims has a date with destiny back at that $70 level. We got to see. Maybe the shorts double down right here. Maybe they get more aggressive, and then maybe the squeeze gets even more intense. But this one is pretty damn incredible. Even Chris, look at that. Kind of crazy to see, to be honest. I agree. Very, very crazy to see how this is playing out. Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention Trump did tweet this morning about freaking J Powell. He said, too late, Jerome Powell is a fool who doesn't have a clue. Other than that, I like him very much. Oil and energy are way down. Almost all costs, groceries and energy is down. Virtually no inflation, tariff money pouring into the U.S. The exact opposite of too late. Enjoy. So I was a little bit more amicable. He said, hey, he doesn't have a clue, but I like him. And then he cited all the things that are down. I kind of do agree that it's time to cut rates. Maybe we didn't have to cut it in May, but in June, I think we should be getting rate cuts. So I think Trump is right. It's time to cut rates. The question is just going to be, when he ends up doing it. Trump is still not live yet. We are waiting for Trump. Markets are pumping in anticipation. Robinhood back to 53. Palantir trying to get back to 117. Nvidia goes green again on the day. Enphase 43.95. Amazon at 190. Where is Meta? Meta right here is at 602. Grabs at 487. And then Bitcoin at 99,378, trying to get back to that $100,000 level. Robinhood 53.07. I will check resistance at 54 and see if we can get there. Trump is still not live. Again, he should be probably in about 10 minutes, and I will switch as soon as we get Trump live. What did you guys say on the poll? Let me see. I asked, would we sell the news or would we pump on Trump? 57% of you said pump. 43% said it would be a sell the news. All right, so basically 60-40. Basically 60-40 on we're going to pump. Resistance on Hood at 54 is 17,000 shares. 17,000 shares. So we got about 17,000 to see if we can crack through. We can crack through those levels. Tesla right here at 282. That one was at 287. That one getting down a little bit here on the day as well. Okay, let's go back to Harley Finkelstein, and then we should have Trump coming on pretty soon.
Position, but what can you say about overall trends, whether that means pull forward of demand in some areas or just the run rate right now of spending interest?
Yeah, Mike, look, we're not seeing any changes as of now in our merchants. Our data shows that we're actually gaining market share in both the U.S. and Europe. And if you look at our data through April, it does not suggest a slowdown. However, I think it is still early to assess the entirety of the potential impacts. But again, as in times of disruption, this is where we do well. One of the other things to keep in mind about the benefit of the Shopify business model is that we have merchants everywhere, all sizes, across every geography and every vertical. So our merchant base is not concentrated in any one particular geography or any one type of industry, including even B2B. We have a huge B2B business now that focuses on automotive and industrial. So I think
Shopify continuing to show they are diversified, they have strength, and this is one of those companies that over the long term probably will be one of the leaders outside of Amazon when it comes to e-commerce. I will switch to Trump as soon as he's live. Until he goes live, let's get some analysis from one of our favorite analysts. By the way, Hoodie 5324. Kris, good morning. How are you?
Good, man. Just reading about this trade deal with the UK. I think everyone at this point should just accept the fact that we are going to have tariffs, but they're not going to be as bad as people originally are thinking. I mean, I think among our largest trading partners that are like our allies, it'll probably be capped at 10%, which is what Stanley Druckenmiller kind of like alluded to. Like anything above 10 would probably be detrimental. China is probably going to be anywhere between 20 and 50%. Yeah, and I think tariffs are just something that we're going to have to live with. I mean, it's a great way to generate a lot of revenue. So if you got this trade deficit, budget deficit, you can close the budget deficit. The challenge is that you're technically going to be slowing down growth, right? Because if you're, well, how do I like express this in an even keel? If we end up applying tariffs and then countries outside, they apply tariffs on some of our stuff, especially if it's something like services, then that means that our businesses are going to have to kind of pay a little bit and their business are going to have to pay. So in my opinion, this is kind of, it's a decent move. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think free trade is a much better way to, do trade, but I don't know. The Trump administration.
Do you think this deal is going to be a nothing burger in the next 10 minutes?
I mean, if you think about it, we have a trade surplus with the UK. So it's not like the UK was like, quote unquote, a cheater, according to even like their definition, which is, if we have a trade surplus with them, they must be taking advantage of us. And it's like, no, the UK actually had a trade surplus with us, where they actually bought more goods and services than they gave us. So keeping a 10% tariff on them is a little bit revealing, in my opinion, that, hey, we just needed to do a consumption tax,
right?
But no one wanted to like call it a consumption tax, and instead they just called it a tariff and said, "Oh, there you go. It's protecting American workers." Where, in my opinion, this is just a way to raise taxes on the poor. Because if you think about it, like the way that our tax system is set up, about 50% of the population pays barely any taxes, right? Like literally less than 3% of, of income gets paid by them, right? So how do you apply a tax to those people who are an untapped, quote unquote, by the administration, an untapped resource? Well, one of the ways you can do it is through consumption. So the more you consume, the more you're going to pay in tax. And I know some people are going to say, well, rich consume more. And that's where you have to kind of look at the individual item and say, look, how many baby strollers does a rich person buy versus how many baby strollers does an average person buy? Both buy one baby stroller, but that $10 impact on the rich person is nothing. Whereas the impact on $10 for that person who maybe have not higher income, that's more, right? So
then what specific thing do you think they could announce in the UK today? Like if they're leaving the 10% tariff, if that's true, what do you think they're going to say? We're going to buy more of your stuff if we already have a surplus? Like what is the framework of the deal that you think could impress the market or could make the market upset?
I think just some stability, man. Like as long as you got stability and certainty, businesses can figure out ways to, pay for the tariff without like pushing some of those costs onto the consumer initially. Eventually they'll do it. Like if you look at like margins on a lot of companies, margins have expanded, right? Because during COVID, there was all this stimulus. So they were able to raise prices, and then we had inflation. So they rose prices, and now inflation is coming down, but those prices haven't come down. So if you look at like a lot of corporate earnings, profit margins are, relatively high. So technically they could absorb portions of those tariffs by just, paying for the tariff themselves. I don't think they can do the whole 10%, but if you think about it, maybe 3% is paid by the importer, 3% by the exporter, and 3% by the consumer. That gets you to 9, almost 10%. So
yeah. Kris, let me just switch over. We got an update right here, and then I'll get your thoughts. But let's just switch over to this real quick.
Yeah.
Whether they're calling this a comprehensive agreement or an update on talks, and we've gotten mixed messaging so far this morning on that. The president, of course, saying that this is a quote full and comprehensive deal. But in the UK, a 10 Downing Street spokesperson for the prime minister said the prime minister will always be sticking up for national interests, and also said that they the talks on a deal between our countries have been continuing at pace, and that the prime minister will update later today. So very key distinction there, whether this is going to be a deal itself, talks on a deal. One thing I will say, the final upshot here, guys, is that it does matter. This is a significant step, showing that the president is looking to calm the waters, signing agreements, even in principle, with some top trading partners. But this is going to be a far cry from the comprehensive US-UK free trade agreement that the two countries have been negotiating for the past 5 years. We're just not there yet. We'll have to see exactly where we are in a few minutes. Guys.
Megan, I am just wondering, I mean, how closely will all of our other trading partners be looking at this? Will every deal sort of have to take its own shape and size? We know they're not a significant trading partner for us, but perhaps sort of significant that they are getting a deal of some kind.
Yes, I do think it's significant that there's a deal of some kind, especially after we heard the president earlier this week kind of downplay the importance of deals at all. At least we'll get some sort of a framework at this point. Every country will certainly have to follow their own set of issues and their own timeline and that sort of thing. But because they want to move so quickly, we also know from the administration that they have sort of a baseline framework that they want every country to try to agree to. So it's going to be key things like the 10% baseline tariff or any tariffs being lowered. How much flexibility is the U.S. showing here versus how much is the other country giving up here? That's going to be key. Every country in the world is watching for those specifics.
Kris, you think other countries are going to be looking at this and figuring out how they can structure their deals?
I think this is where a lot of countries who've got used to free trade may not be as, amicable to this. But eventually, I think, if they want to do business in the U.S., they'll just have to accept it. And, I've been reading the chat while the person was talking. Look, I gave the example of a baby stroller. I think Dougie said, well, the poor people just buy strollers from the rich people when they're done. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's an idea. What about things that are consumable, right? Like coffee. So if you import coffee from around the planet and it costs 10% more, how much coffee does a rich person drink? How much coffee does a poor person drink or a medium income person drink? They consume the same amount. So if you raise taxes, tariffs on 10% of coffee imports, now that 10% gets absorbed. But like I said, from a proportional amount, the proportion amount for a poor person's disposable income is more than someone who's at the uber wealthy level, So
yeah.
Now the benefits of this, and look, everything is always two-sided, is that now, quote unquote, the idea is, well, the wealthy have more money to keep in their pockets because they're not having to pay additional taxes to pay for this deficit, right? Like this, the budget deficit. Because if the Democrats came in power, they'd, raise taxes on the rich. Well, the rich are capital allocators. They traditionally invest money, right? So that means that there's less money to invest in companies and startups and all this other stuff. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where technically you're going to be raising prices on the, poor and medium class people. And, the rich are going to be able to kind of maintain their current, like, lower end of their tax range. But that also means that they're going to be able to reinvest a lot more capital, so right. That's where that curve comes in. I forgot what it's called with like the more you lower taxes, the more technically you can raise revenue because there's going to be more investment income around the world. And I mean, in the US, and basically you're going to be able to kind of grow your economy. So this is where I think the philosophy of the Trump administration is we need to get these tax extensions done, but we've got this wing in the party that is fiscal hawkish. So you're going to need to raise revenue for Laffer curve. Thank you, Austin.
Dude, I swear I was going to say it, but I wasn't sure if it was the Laffer curve and I didn't want to say it and say the wrong thing. I should have said it because that would have sounded so smart, but I didn't say it. But I was going to say it, but I didn't. But yeah, the Laffer curve, right?
Yeah. So, I think overall, this is definitely a play on how to do trade going into the future. I mean, I do think that maybe on some level, the poor and the middle income people will benefit a little bit in that if you do put up some trade barriers, it's likely that there's going to be more job creation in the United States, which means wages should, naturally climb up. The only thing is, you have to make it so that the people at that level have the right tools to get those jobs, right? So if you think about like advanced manufacturing and stuff like that, you can't just be like someone who walks off the street. You got to learn things. Now, the one thing I will give this administration some credit, and hopefully this is something that the education department does, is they focus less on social studies degrees and stuff like that in colleges, and kind of like enforce people to choose things based on an actual outcome. So it's like, you see all these kids that go to NYU and get like a degree on social dynamics of,
It's called sociology. That's basically
sociology, whatever. So the thing is that the tangible return on that degree is little to none. And then at the same time, you're saddling these students with ton of student debt. Where as of right now, you could just technically take a high school student, give them a couple of years of apprenticeship, put them in a role that's going to generate, give them a great job for the next 50 to 100, not 50 years, 100 years is too much, but like for the next 50 years, right? So this is where I think there's like nuances all over how the economy is trying to be rejiggered to benefit the United States in the future. And then, like I said, I don't mind giving the administration some room to work. The only thing is, if they do it to the degree that they did with Liberation Day, that is where I'm 100% like, hey, listen, you're gonna like cause the U.S. to go into a depression. And
but I think everyone knows that's not going to happen, right? And that's why, I mean, what was your take on Jay Powell yesterday? He sounded super hawkish, but he knows that the tariffs are going to get walked back. So why do you think he's being so aggressive on even committing to a single rate cut for 2025?
I think this is kind of like the Fed's way of pressuring the Trump administration to get the trade deals done and bring more certainty into the markets. So instead of being like an ally and saying, we'll back whatever you do, Mr. Trump, yay, he's like, no, you better make sure that you're not going to fuck over the economy. And I'll make sure that you kind of are. So Jay Powell is providing almost like a check against Trump's most like base level views, especially some of the people in his administration who are a little bit crazy on tariffs, like Peter Navarro with his like complete like, oh, it's okay, let's do 50% tariffs on everyone, So I think as long as you get people to moderate their stances, I think that's what the Fed is trying to do, because the Fed says like it's not our job to guide fiscal policy, our job is monetary policy, and it's not their job to dictate monetary policy to us. But there's ways that each hand washes the other.
What do you think of the I think the European Central Bank cut rates again today, right?
Yeah. Well, the Europeans don't have to worry about inflation because they don't have the tariffs. They don't have a sea change in their tariff policy. So why are they going to worry? Like, look at their inflation rates in their country. It's not that bad. And at the same time, they don't have market uncertainty. And they're in the process of spending more to grow their economies because the Trump administration kind of forcing them to. So, the Germans are spending more on defense. I think all over Europe right now is getting a ton of investment money, and they're willing to reinvest in their economies and maybe take down some of their non-trade barriers. And if that happens, then Europe could be in a period of renaissance, let's just say. I wouldn't hold my breath though. The Europeans tend to go socialism pretty fast,
We got some news from Fox. So Fox is reporting Wall Street execs with contacts in the White House say the plan for trade deals are India, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. And the goal is to have tariffs at or around 10% per the UK. China, of course, is another story. So that means if we have 10% or around 10% on India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the UK, that means he's not going to be using that 10% as a bargaining tactic to like say, hey, I'll bring it down if you guys buy more of our stuff. It seems like their plan is to leave the 10% and negotiate around everything else.
Yeah, and I think that was the original plan. It's just they just went with this stupid Liberation Day nonsense, thinking that was somehow going to play well to the markets, and it didn't. So they're having to retreat and get back to that 10% amount. So maybe they overshot, and they turned it into a publicity stunt. But I think their ultimate goal was always going to be around 10% and less. I mean, if you think about how much the U.S. imports, I think it's about $4 trillion a year right now. With $4 trillion in imports, if you do 10%, that's roughly $400 billion in additional tax revenue per year.
Right.
And $400 billion. If you think about our trade our deficit right now, our not trade deficit, our budget deficit is about $2 trillion. So 400 billion goes a long way towards that. And then if you take out another probably 600 to 750 billion from rate reductions, because I think eventually we're going to get to a point where we're reducing our interest on our debt from lower interest rates on our debt. If that ends up happening, then it gets us to about $1 trillion. And if you think about it, a $1 trillion budget deficit is actually not bad. They could manage it, and that gets the administration close to their 3% goal by 2027.
All right, Kris, I gotta ask you about Google. So you are heavy in Google. You've been in the stock for a while. Yesterday seemed to be the worst day since 2024. Is this a nothing burger, or should people take it seriously that search might be dying?
I mean, if it's a melting ice cube, it's still going to take a really, really long time to melt. And the other thing is, one of the comments that I think Google made that was actually probably like pretty good is, I personally started using ChatGPT, and I don't think I use Google as much as I did before. Okay. And that there's no secret around that. Anyone who's using LLMs, like, there's easier ways to kind of like get the information that you need. But I don't go to ChatGPT and be like, tell me what the greatest, what a good Chinese restaurant is nearby. I still go to Google and be like, hey, what time is my local Chinese restaurant open? Or if I'm trying to look for certain websites, I'm not going to mention what kinds of websites. You don't go to ChatGPT to search for that. You go to Google. It's like, hey, it's an easier way to find those things. So I think Google's search monopoly is still going to be there. Now the total volume of searches may go down, but that's just. But
is it an existential threat to them losing Apple and not getting the 2 billion devices they have distribution to via Safari?
I don't think so. I've used Safari. It makes you want to use Chrome. If you ever used a lot of other browsers, you use it for 10 minutes, you're like, man, I got to get some Chrome in me again. So
I heard that take yesterday. A lot of people were saying, you know what? If Apple gets rid of Google as the default, I'm just going to make Google the default. Yeah. And so maybe there's a world where people love it so much they're not going to really leave, even if it's not a default anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and the good thing with Google is that they are in the process of transitioning their core businesses away just from search. So they're a heavily diversified business, right? If search was the only thing that they were relying on, then yeah, I'd say Google has a major problem. But they've got cloud, they've got YouTube, they've got Waymo, they've got like Google's, all the Google One apps that they have, like, Sheets, Docs, all that stuff. All of those things provide an additional revenue source for Google in the future, right? So I think we have to just kind of take a step back and be like, okay, look, search may be a big portion of their operating income, but they have all these other things that are also catching up and generating rev and operating income from those businesses, and that can offset some of the search declines. And like I said, even if search does decline, it hasn't shown up in the numbers yet, and I don't think it's going to show up. I think if anything, it flatlines their search growth rather than completely displaces it. Which means that their operating income just has to come from other places. And at the rate that their operating income is growing, and at the same time they're buying back shares, it's still a great business to invest in long term. So,
right. Let's go to Dan Ives, get his thoughts on Google and what's going on with tech.
On the Hill, our next guest, of course, outlining how to play the sector in his AI revolution. He's bullish on Alphabet, Meta, and Palantir, to name a few. Dan Ives, Wedbush Securities Global Head of Technology Research, joins us at Post 9 today in your Thursday best. What are you watching here today out of the hearing? I mean, we heard some interesting sound bites from Emily Wilkins just a moment ago, sort of with congressmen basically saying, look, like, things have changed even dramatically. If we would have had this hearing last year and put in some kind of legislation or guardrails, it would have been dramatically different now.
Look, the reality is that the technology is going 100 miles an hour in a left lane in a Ferrari.
Sure.
The regulatory is in a right lane going 35 miles an hour. And I think that it's really going to be more about self-regulation, but the use cases are exploding. And something we've talked about in the show, a lot, this spending, that regulatory is not going to change. And a lot of it's going to be self-regulatory. I mean, you're going to hear obviously from Altman and everyone else, and you're going to see a lot of consolidation. And I don't think regulatory is going to stop that.
And I would love to sort of also circle you back to the other thing we're watching in DC as we await sort of the discussion out of the Oval Office with what's going to happen with UK, whether it's a trade deal, agreement. I mean, how we know that their trade relationship is relatively small when we're talking about the likes of China or India, Vietnam, something else. But how are tech companies watching the words and parsing through what we hear? I mean, how important will those be for the bigger deals?
I think everyone's it's India, it's Vietnam, and ultimately it's China. And obviously this weekend in terms of best and what we see there. I mean, when it comes to UK, I mean, obviously a small, I'll call it a baby step in the right direction. But I mean, tech companies that I talk to, and we've all the supply chain stuff, it's all about China. I mean, that right now, that's the hearts and lungs. I mean, UK is nice, but it's not moving the needle.
Well, the suspension of the diffusion rule may be a positive, obviously, for the likes of Nvidia. I just want to come back to something you just said, Dan, which is you expect consolidation. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's specific. When I look like in terms of big tech, specifically on the software side, I think you're going to see a lot of small and even emerging private players potentially get bought. You look at Microsoft, what I believe Alphabet, even despite the regulatory, you're going to look at names like IBM and others. I mean, David, it's my view that like the strong are going to get stronger. And the technology, even when we've seen it in earnings season, this is an AI revolution. Tariffs are not stopping it. And I think over the next decade, companies want to make sure that they are well positioned when it comes to consolidation.
Yeah, there's no right, and of course, so yeah, many of the private companies that are fairly well funded, but you could conceivably see them end up in larger hands. I am curious to get your reaction to those comments yesterday from Eddie Q at Apple, which sent shares of Google down. You don't cover Google, actually.
No, we do. Yeah. So
wait, you do? It's not on your coverage.
So I do. I do cover Google.
Because you cover everything. So I would be shocked if you didn't.
Sure.
No, it's.
But I know you cover Apple because we've come on and talked about it so often. What do you make of the comments, and/or it gets us back to sort of the AI strategy at the company itself of Apple?
Yeah. Look, I think the comments a bit shot across the bow in terms of look, Apple, their own AI strategy. I mean, they're trying to basically I think ultimately own more and more of it. When you look at the Google relationship, look, my view is that the bark's worse than the bite here. I mean, if you look at search queries, all of our data that we've done, I mean, it gets us more and more bullish. We don't believe this is the end of search. I also think that they're going to pivot his business models, obviously a lot of regulatory scrutiny. Look, for Apple, if you look where they are, I mean, they got to really establish what they believe is going to be their future. AI is going to be part of their future. But Google's going to be a huge part of that. I don't view that negatively as maybe the indication was that we saw for Alphabet.
So you think that was an overreaction yesterday?
I think that was a way overreaction, but we're in a white knuckle period.
Sure.
In terms of everything that you've talked about in terms of on the regulatory front. Now you have this sort of shot across the bow that's unexpected from Apple, which is obviously their core partner. So I think right now it's an agita period, but it doesn't make us any less bullish in terms of our view for Alphabet and just overall for big tech, because everything we've seen, the use cases are exploding, the spending's accelerating.
Yeah, all right. Let's get back to your famous channel checks there and the likes. I mean, I am curious, Dan, because we are waiting for these agentic AI or AI agents, the agentic age, so to speak, to really pick up, to start to see use in the enterprise that we can point to, or a CEO can point to and say, hey, I just got my margins up such and such basis points as a result of the efficiencies. When does that start happening?
I think you look at Palantir, to me, that is the case study. That is front and center, showing what I believe we're going to see over the coming years. In terms of all the use cases, U.S. commercial business exploded. I mean, right now we have 85 use cases. A year ago, we had 10. And I think what we're starting to see more and more is that it's across verticals: healthcare, financials, government, and obviously, in terms of retail and a lot of others. And I think that's what ServiceNow saw. I think you're going to see with IBM, we were at their analyst day, what they talked about, I think everything Arvind's doing, all the hyperscalers. On this show for years, we've talked about the revolution.
Yes.
And obviously it was about the godfather of AI, Jensen, Nvidia. But I think now it's starting to happen as part of our AI 30. The software names, cybersecurity, internet, it's starting to spread. And tariffs are not going to change this fourth
Well, in
industrial
fact, they
revolution.
may do the opposite. I mean, to the extent you're getting price pressure in some way, you're going to look for efficiency. It may move you even more aggressively towards AI.
Exactly. And I think that's why this was such a pivotal earnings season, because if you look at the spending, and we talk about in our channel checks, the spending's accelerated. And if there was a time that they were going to put a brake on it and you were going to actually see a step back, it was going to be this quarter. And that's why it's my view, it's 15% of budgets. In terms of when I look at AI, you go back a year ago, it's what, 1-2%. Can't stop that train, whether it's a hearing in DC, whether it's tariffs. I mean, this AI revolution, in my opinion, it's another Jalen Brunson moment for tech.
Genie's out of the bottle. All right.
Palantir 117.45, folks. She is not slowing down. And Robinhood 53.80, up 7% on the day. Palantir also up about 6.3%. Pretty damn incredible with this momentum. U.S. has imposed sanctions on China refinery importing Iranian oil. This is not really new news. They knew, they announced they were going to do this 2 weeks ago, so now they just made it official. But we still don't have Trump live yet. I'm sure he'll be talking more about this when he officially goes live. Kris, any reaction to the sanctions on Iran when it comes to, or sanctions on China when it comes to Iranian oil?
Not really. I mean, it's pretty much understood that, the independent teapots, as they call them, from China have always kind of skirted the U.S. sanctions, and literally they just changed their name, called themselves something else, and they keep doing it. It's a nothing burger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for the rest of the year, we have to just be on the lookout for, believe it or not, inflation and unemployment. I think the thing that Jay Powell mentioned yesterday is a very important thing, because if the economy starts to kind of weaken and employment starts to take a bit of a dip from all the tariff uncertainty, that could present in the numbers and actually cause, some challenges around that. So, for me right now, I'm pretty happy about being hedged via long treasuries. I think the shelter component is coming down at a really fast pace. A lot of inventories coming to the market, and I think we're starting to see major price cuts in a lot of regions. So once again, I think inflation is not as big of a problem as people are kind of like thinking right now. And at the same time, employment is actually getting worse. If you actually look underneath the covers, technically speaking, Jay Powell should have actually cut in May and probably should cut in June, but it seems like the numbers are going down. And the only reason why I think Jay Powell hasn't cut is because of the uncertainty around tariffs. So if you eliminate that uncertainty around tariffs, then that could mean that that kind of unlocks the Fed to actually start doing rate cuts,
Yeah, and I mean, maybe today is going to be the first step in unlocking a little bit of that uncertainty. Jay Powell did say that word a lot yesterday.
The thing is, no one knows what the impacts of the tariffs are going to be just yet, because it hasn't shown up in the data. And the thing is, remember, there's multiple components of the inflation figure, because they're looking at core PCE, and a big portion of core PCE is actually shelter. Right. So there are other components that, even if they're not included in core PCE, they do tend to bleed their way into the market. So oil prices are literally at, I think, 5-year, not 5-year, but I think 3-4 year lows. That helps tremendously with inflation numbers. And then same thing with shelter. Shelter right now inventory is starting to climb. So that means that shelter prices are moderating. Same thing with rent. There's a lot of rentals out there. Vacancy rates are up. So all the stuff that I'm seeing points towards much lower inflation coming our way in the next 6 months. So
TLT is kind of your play there, because you think when rates come down, this thing does very well.
Yeah, I think so.
Palantir 118 has 25,000 shares of resistance. Robinhood trying to get back to 54. Overall markets are green. Kris, what's your kind of raw intuition? You think we dump on this trade announcement with the UK, or you think the markets like it and we keep bumping?
I mean, the question is, what's the next one? And then what's the next one? And then what's the next one after that, right? So the key is, if this is it could almost be like a domino effect, where one goes and another and then another and then another. And, that's just kind of how it plays out. So I think the market is getting optimistic, hey, this tariff thing is going to be behind us. With Trump, you never know, though, so the market is not going to give it. The market will definitely come in and buy stuff and, make some short-term highs. But with Trump, you never know. He could say some crazy shit next week, and the entire market will tank again. You know, maybe right now. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but did you see that he almost like trying to like mess with China and be like, we're not the one who asked for a meeting with you. You asked a meeting with us. You know, go look at the transcripts. Like, damn, bro. Like, what? Why do you need to do a dick measuring contest? You're already at the table. Why be a dick? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them want to seem like they're not the ones who texted first. And you know, this is the clip that Kris is talking about right there.
China said the U.S. initiated the trade talks this week and that its position hasn't changed. Are you still confident you can reach a deal with China?
They said we initiated. Well, I think they ought to go back and study their files. Okay, I do think that.
China
said. I mean, he doesn't want to be the girl who texted first.
You know, it's funny. The media is always trying to like get Trump's like more baser instincts out there and basically try to kind of goad him into being a little bit more of a, what's the word? Basically the media tries to tilt Trump a lot.
They try to bait him.
They try to bait him all the time. Like literally, like even Congress does that. When you were watching yesterday with Scott Bessent, the entire time they were like trying to bait him into saying certain things. I mean, that's what politics is like, right? Yeah. Where politics is just make the other guy look bad, you know, as opposed to, hey, like, let's just apply some good logic to what we're doing. It's like, no, let's just, and that's the thing. Like, this is the kind of stuff that sells. So of course the media is going to do its best to sell it.
Right. So. All right. We're still waiting for Trump. I'm going to switch to Sam Altman getting questioned by Ted Cruz. As soon as Trump goes live, we will switch to Trump.
All right, brother. I got to head out. So I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, Kris. Thank you. Chris's Twitter, I'll put in the chat. Kris, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Take care.
See ya.
This is AMD. AMD develops high-performance processors, graphic chips, and AI accelerators that power artificial intelligence. And Dr. Sue is also a Texan. Our third witness today is Michael Intrater, the CEO and co-founder of CoreWeave, an AI hyper.
There's a whole sort of AI factory, like a supply chain of energy chips, standing up data centers, building the racks, and more. We've got to do that really well in the US so that we can continue to innovate, continue to lead, and continue to sort of shape this revolution. Speaking of that, I was very inspired by what Chairman Cruz said, so I'd like to deviate from script here and tell a story. In my prepared written testimony, I covered the basics. So if it's okay, I'd love to tell you a story. I grew up in St. Louis, and I was a computer nerd, and it was the time of the internet boom, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. We kind of lived in this beautiful old brick house in this suburb of St. Louis, and I lived in the attic, and I had this computer, and I would stay up all night, and I would learn to program, and I got to kind of use the internet, and it was like a crazy time of tons of innovation. All sorts of stuff was happening. It was amazing, and it was all happening here. All the internet companies were in the US. I used a Mac that was built here. I used chips that were started, you know, near where I now live. And I learned about computers. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I can draw a straight line from that experience to founding OpenAI and getting to work on companies like Helion. The spirit of American innovation and supportive entrepreneurship. I don't think the internet could have happened anywhere else. And if that didn't happen, I don't think the AI revolution would have happened here. I am a child of the internet revolution. I have the great honor to be one of the parents of the many parents of the AI revolution. And I think it is no accident that that's happening in America.
Okay, you have CNBC reporting. Reporters are gathered and waiting for the 10 a.m. White House trade announcement, which is clearly running late. It's been 40 minutes. One of the CNBC reporters saying, I was told about an hour ago that details in the agreement were still changing and that no information was final until the actual event. So that could be explaining why the delay. So potentially we are still, or the White House might be still figuring out the actual details they want to show to the public. And that could be the reason we are late. I would imagine it starts in the next 15, 20 minutes, but we are definitely a bit late here today.
Again and again and again. But we need to make sure that we build our systems and that we set our policy in a way where that continues to happen. I think this is magic. I don't want to live in Europe either. I think America is just an incredible and special thing, and it will not only be the place where the AI revolution happens, but all the revolutions after. I was home visiting St. Louis recently, drove by our old house, and I kind of like, it was at night, and I looked up, and in that like top floor window, the light was on, and I thought, you know, hopefully there's some kid in there staying up late at night playing with ChatGPT, figuring out how he or she is going to start whatever company comes next.
All right, let's get a little bit more coverage on this trade stuff and why it is late. You can see Sam Altman right here trying to humanize himself. He is one of those people that is seen as a snake, one of those people that seems like he cheated Elon. There's a lot of mixed perceptions on Sam Altman. A lot of people also think that he's the darling superstar of AI. So in this testimony, I imagine he's going to try to get Congress and the White House to understand that he is a pivotal leader in AI and they shouldn't think of him in a rather negative way.
From here, how worried are you about the idea of stagflation, something we haven't seen in quite some time?
Yeah, you know, it's a great point. And look, Powell summarized it well. The risks have risen, but we haven't seen them materialize yet. So inflation is still relatively contained, 2.4% CPI rate. We see a labor market that's pretty healthy and resilient as well, 4.2% unemployment rate. Now on stagflation, look, we certainly don't see us returning to a stagflation environment that we saw back in the 70s, for example, where inflation was running 10, 11, 12%.
The Telegraph is reporting US-UK deal will cut beef tariffs to zero. The Telegraph, which is a UK media magazine or publication, is reporting US-UK deal will cut beef tariffs to close to zero. That might be one of the things we get highlighted once this announcement goes live.
Plus, and we were headed towards a deeper and more prolonged recession. Could we see a move higher in prices and a move lower in economic growth? Certainly. But our base case doesn't call for any sort of deeper, prolonged recessionary environment. And by the way, there are some positives as we head to year end, perhaps a couple of Fed cuts, perhaps a tax bill of some sort. And then, of course, corporations and companies that have more definitive outlook as well. So earnings that could reaccelerate.
What is the risk of, I guess, which is the risk higher right now with everything in this tension, that keyword tension that you're trying to balance if you're the Fed, cutting too soon, cutting too late?
Yeah. You know, it does feel like the economy and the effect on the economy is going to be the outsized move. Keep in mind on inflation, the CPI basket, 60 to 70% is services inflation. So we are potentially seeing consumers pulling back on areas like leisure, hospitality, restaurants, dining out, et cetera. And that could have a bigger impact than the goods pricing moving higher. So we think inflation still looks like might move higher, but contained. So we are more worried about economic softness. And we think the Fed will move on that first.
What are you relying on in terms of data there? Because it seems somewhat mixed. I mean, we do hear some of the survey data is negative in terms of consumer. But then I talked to the CEOs of Wells Fargo, for example, and they're, you know, the real-time data they get on credit cards or bank, any of them. They're not seeing it yet.
Yeah, the consumer is held in there. And we saw that in first quarter GDP, even with the negative print of 1.8% consumption growth rate, still lower than the 4% we saw back in Q4. But we are watching in terms of what's happening with the ports, what's happening with goods coming in, and then demand for that goods as well. We are seeing credit card debt levels for the lower income consumer moving higher. We are seeing a little bit pullback there. Although we will say it is the mid and upper income consumer that drives the economy. And thus far, they're okay. But perhaps some softening coming, especially if we continue to see this uncertainty.
Stocks relatively green. We're still waiting for the announcement. Palantir 117.50, got 25,000 shares to get to 118. Hoodie 53.41, trying to get up there to 54. Nothing's really moving crazy. Everything is on tilt until Trump speaks. S&P is up about 0.5%. The Qs were red at one point. The Qs are now up 0.65. Nvidia, I think, is not really moving because there's no confirmation on the AI diffusion rule being repealed. It was a rumor last night, and it is up from 113, so it's technically still up. But that hasn't been confirmed by the White House. And until we get confirmation, I think Nvidia, might not really see a ton of momentum yet. But based on what Trump says with the UK, that could pump the entire market. And then Bitcoin, it's getting awfully close to 100, 400 points away. 100 is going to be very psychological to be able to break through. But if it does, that would be pretty damn exciting. We are still waiting. We are still waiting to see when Trump goes live. Here's an update on wholesale inventories. We got that data about 20 minutes ago.
We also have some trade data crossing the tape, and Rick Santelli has it for us. Rick.
Yes, David. This is wholesale inventories and sales. On the inventories, it's a March final. On sales, it's a new number. On the final, we lose 0.1%. We go from 0.5% to up 0.4%. But maybe there's something important real quickly I need to go over. If you look at the beginning of the year in inventories, we started out with a powerful up 0.8. That was the biggest build going back to the summer of 22. Why is that important? Because of the pull forward that we see in many of the numbers. Now it's tapering off a bit. And if you look at sales, they started out the year weak, but they've been building up 0.6% on sales. It's definitely a little bit light. We're expecting a number closer to 1%. And we lose 0.4 in a revision from 2.4 to 2%. It started out the year, of course, at minus 1.5, though. So we are starting to come back and get back in line to some of this surge that we saw at the beginning of the year. Interest rates, well, they are moving up, but the short end's moving up much faster.
You do have the 10-year that's moving up today, but stocks are green, so that's okay. Again, I think what's really going to get the 10-year to come down is eventually getting rate cuts. What gets rate cuts to come down is Trump walks back some of these tariff rates, and that, gives Jay Powell a little bit more clarity and lack of certainty or lack of uncertainty. But it's still going to be a while until I think the Fed changes their mind right here. Really, that Fed meeting yesterday was surprising, dude. I did not expect him to be that hawkish. I really thought he would be a bit more chill, and you could just tell he didn't even want to be there. He didn't want to answer the questions. He really didn't feel like engaging with the reporters. It was kind of just like, hey, this is Trump's fault. We'll see what happens when he gets some deals done. Hopefully, he even mentioned, Jay Powell, that we see some more progress on trade deals, and then we'll look at the data. I mean, someone asked him, can you commit to one rate cut this year? And he said no. And in the last meeting, they guided for 2 rate cuts. And now he doesn't have to give a literal commitment, but the fact that he was so abrasive with the fact that, no, we might not cut at all, was just like, goodness, like he's really thinking the tariff volatility might be enough to warrant not getting a cut in 2025, which I don't think would be good for markets. I mean, individual stocks might be okay if we don't get rate cuts, but the overall markets need, and they're pricing in at least 2 rate cuts, if not a bit more than that. So it is going to take the next few months to see how this plays out. It might end up being like 2024, where we didn't get a rate cut until September. But then once we got it, we started getting a lot more towards the end of the year. The Quantum Bull, thank you for the $10 super chat. Thanks for all your great commentary, Mitch. Check out QBTS crazy rallies today on strong earnings. Yeah, we looked at the earnings today. Congrats to those that are in this one. Great numbers. 34% right here. It was up 500% on revenue, EPS, margins were up. I mean, this was a great quarter. Again, the stock probably is not about fundamental valuations, 15 million in revenue, $2 billion market cap. But if you're buying any of the quantum names, you kind of don't care about the valuation. You just care about looking forward towards the future. So this stock doing really well, up 34%. It was down a lot in February, like all the quantum names, kind of bottomed out around that $5-6 range. And now good earnings, giving them a lot of strength here today. AST, this one also, Vivek's fund is going crazy because, well, it's a Bitcoin treasury company and Bitcoin's up today, 127% on the day. Bitcoin, 400 points away from 100, but ASST, this one getting a lot of momentum here today. Now, this one obviously feels like people are chasing and eventually it'll dump. I don't know if it's sustainable for it to hold these levels, but it's also a SPAC. So, some wonky things can happen here. And if you got in early today, congrats. I mean, this one's up 130% currently here right now. All right. Is Trump live? I don't have. Okay, here we go. Trump is live. Here we go. We're starting.
Your voice comes through beautifully here. So I just want to.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it is. You sound great. I just want to begin by saying that this is a very special day because it's Victory Day, World War II, May 8th. And just by happenstance, we have the Prime Minister on the phone, and we were great allies in that. And it's very unusual. It's just incredible that that day is the same day that we signed a tremendous trade deal for both countries. So I'm going to begin by just adding that we just concluded the rare earth deal with Ukraine. That's been fully ratified and approved by their legislative branches. And so we appreciate that. And I'll be speaking with the president in a little bit later. And we appreciate that. But the deal is all now signed up and ratified. And we have access to a massive amount of very, very high quality rare earth. This morning, I'm thrilled to announce that we've reached a breakthrough trade deal with the United Kingdom, incredible country. Today is a victory day for World War II. We won the war together exactly 80 years ago, so there could be no more perfect morning to reach this historic agreement. And it's beautiful weather out. I will tell you that, Keir. Beautiful weather. It's so perfect outside. But it's really, in particular, the agreement with one of our closest and most cherished allies. And we're so happy that that's the way it worked out. I want to thank Prime Minister Starmer and his very talented team for their outstanding work and partnership. Today's agreement with the UK is the first in a series of agreements on trade that my administration has been negotiating over the past 4 weeks. With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade. The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access for American beef, ethanol, and virtually all of the products produced by our great farmers. And our Secretary, as you know, of Agriculture is here. Brooke, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
You'll let the farmers know. In addition, the UK will reduce or eliminate numerous non-tariff barriers that unfairly discriminated against American products. But this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries, because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed, and we appreciate that. They'll also be fast-tracking American goods through their customs process, so our exports go to a very, very quick form of approval, and there won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways. The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. We think just about everything's been approved. So good for both countries. And we'll also receive new market access for American chemicals, machinery, and many other industrial products that weren't allowed. And they'll end up getting products that they'll be able to price. And if they like them better and we make great products, they'll be buying those products, but they were not available in the UK. Furthermore, in a historic step, the deal includes plans that will bring the United Kingdom into the economic security alignment with the United States. That's the first of its kind. So we have a big economic security blanket, and that's very important. And we feel very, very comfortable with that because it's been a great ally, truly one of our great allies. I mean, a lot of people say our greatest ally. I don't want to insult people by saying that, but I can say it's certainly one of our greatest, and right at the top. And they're the first one we're talking about. And by the way, we have many meetings planned today and tomorrow, and every country wants to be making deals. And we have a meeting, as you know, Scott will be going over to Switzerland on Saturday, and that'll be very, very interesting. Let's find out, but I think they want to make a deal very badly too. Both countries have agreed that the economic security is national security, and will be working together as allies to ensure that we have a strong industrial base, appropriate export controls, and protections for key technologies and industries like steel. Steel is a big factor. Both countries will become stronger with steel and things necessary for military. You know, we used to build ships and other things literally at a level that nobody's ever seen. And we haven't, we've eased up, and I would say that the UK certainly eased up, but now we're going to be uneasing both, and we work together. Once again, I want to thank Prime Minister Starmer. He's been terrific for his partnership in this matter. The special relationship and external bond, it's really an external and an internal bond between our two countries, will soon be stronger than ever before. And we really do. We have a great relationship. I want to just say that the representatives of UK have been so professional, and it's been an honor doing business with all of them, and in particular the Prime Minister. And I'd like to introduce him now to say a few words. Mr. Prime Minister, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, Donald. And this is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great countries. And I think it's a real tribute to the history that we have of working so closely together. Can I pay tribute, Donald, to your negotiating team as well, particularly Howard and Jameson, who've done an incredible job, a very professional job, and my team as well. Two negotiating teams have worked at pace now for a number of weeks to bring in this deal today. Really important deal. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries. It's going to not only protect jobs but create jobs, opening market access. And as you say, Donald, the timing couldn't be more apt, because not only was it 80 years ago today that victory came for Europe after and at the end of the Second World War, but of course on that day the UK and the US stood together as the closest of allies. And Donald, I think even down to the hour, because you may or may not know that it was about this time of day, exactly 80 years ago, that Winston Churchill announced victory in Europe, and that led to great celebrations across Europe, across America, but particularly in the United Kingdom. Literally people going out into the street, putting bunting up, going up to the palace. And so to be able to announce this great deal on the same day, 80 years forward, almost at the same hour, and as we were 80 years ago, with the UK and the US standing side by side, I think is incredibly important and makes this truly historic. That close relationship has endured over those 80 years. As you know, Donald, when it comes to defense and security and intelligence sharing, of course, there are no two countries that are closer than our two countries. And now we take this into new and important territory by adding trade and the economy to the closeness of our relationship. It is built, as you say, on those notions of fairness and reciprocal arrangements. We've always had a fair and balanced arrangement between our countries. This builds on that, hugely important for sectors like car manufacturing and for steel and aluminium and so many others. And yes, we can finish hammering out some of the details, but there's a fantastic platform here, including, of course, on the tech side, where I think I'm right in saying we're the only two Western countries with trillion-dollar sectors when it comes to tech. And in the end, it comes down to, as you say, Donald, economic security is national security. On national security, we've been absolutely the closest of allies for so many years, keeping the peace through that close alliance, that friendship. And now we add to that this deal on trade and the economy. And I want to thank you for your leadership on that, Donald, and for the way in which your team have negotiated this. And I'm so pleased that we've got this deal, we've finalized it, and we've built an incredible platform for the future. So thank you so much. Donald, I'm now going to go and do a press conference. I think you have your press in with you. But on the details, I think if you've got Howard, we can deal with that through one of my team.
That's great. Well, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. It's an honor. We're going to have a continued, maybe a better relationship than ever before. You know, I don't know if the media knows, but the US and UK have been working for years to try and make a deal. And it never quite got there.
Yeah.
It did with this Prime Minister. So I want to just congratulate you.
Well, with this president, this prime minister, we've managed to achieve what many people have tried to achieve for many years.
That's right.
And I'm really pleased, and it feels completely historic and on a special 80-year anniversary as well. So, Donald, thank you so much. It's really good to have got this deal over the line. Tribute to both teams, tribute to our countries, and tribute to your leadership.
Thank you. Well, it really is a great thing. And you go do your press conference, and I'll see you soon. Maybe speak to you later. But thank you very much. An incredible thing. I can't tell you that for so many years, even as I sat, everybody talked and talked and talked about a deal with, it just seemed like a natural deal, but it was not done. But now it was done with us. So I feel very proud to have been a part of it. Keir, thank you very much.
Thanks, Donald, and we'll speak again soon.
Very good. So long. Bye. That's very nice. Why don't I do this? Why don't I have our Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, give a little description of the deal pretty quick. And then the good side, the very nice side, we'll be speaking about it also, maybe, from so you get a pretty equal. I think it's a very, it's just been a deal that was, we thought, very complicated. It became very simple. It's opening up the country that we really didn't have the kind of access to that I would have thought. I was surprised. I think it's why the deal never got done before. It was, they've been working on this deal for 25 years. And we got it done, and we got it done. Really, it's going to be great for both countries. So, Howard, if you could go, and then somebody else, you may have, you'll pick whoever you want who'd like to do it. I have a feeling you're going to do it, right? So you guys go ahead, and then we'll take questions right after that. But I think you'll get a pretty good understanding of how big it is. It's a very large deal, very big deal. And Howard, go ahead.
So the UK is the 6th largest economy in the world and the 4th largest that we export to, right? So it's a huge market, a top 10 market. If you remember Liberation Day, they were at 10% because we have balanced trade with the UK, right? They say they have a surplus, but of course that counts gold bullion, which is, so let's just call it balanced trade. So how do you open up a market in balanced trade? People think it's impossible. They've always thought it was impossible until President Trump came on the scene and changed the way things work. So here's what we've got. We've opened up new market access, ethanol, beef, machinery, all the agricultural products. They've agreed to open their markets, and that will add $5 billion of opportunity to American exporters. So the question is, why would they do that now? Because they've never done it before. And we still have our 10% tariff on, which will produce $6 billion of revenue for the United States. So the idea was, how do they keep their jobs, protect their economy, and do the best for their people while opening the market for us? And the ways they studied it, their team was exceptional, and they tried to figure out the markets that they're importing from other people and try to send them over to America. So why were they always favoring others and not us? And what they've done is they've found the ways to do that so that we have new access, right? But the UK workers are protected. And that was the balance. So we did a deal with them in automobiles. And if you're not building here, we charge you a 25% tariff. But the president, and by the way, I want to make this clear, while Jameson and I worked hard, this was the president's deal. And people think, oh, that's not the way it works. If you got to sit next to him, I have the best deal maker to my left. And if you don't think that we take advantage of him calling the prime minister and getting that deal done, you don't understand who's the president of the United States. So he's the closer. He gets deals done that we could never get done because he understands business. He understands deals. And that's why we're here today. So he agreed they could send 100,000 cars into America and only pay a 10% tariff. And that protects their car industry. And remember, we do 16 million cars a year. So this is only like 0.6%. But for the UK auto people, this is tens of thousands of jobs that the president agreed that he would protect for them. So he made that deal, right? Then steel and aluminum, right? Their steel business has been destroyed like everybody else has been destroyed by people dumping steel into their markets. And British Steel had announced it was closing down. So the British government, as part of this deal, nationalized British Steel, and they're going to match the kinds of models we do. They'll put tariffs on, they'll put quotas on. They want to do it with America so they can be part of the resurgence of steel and aluminum in America. And that saves them, again, thousands and thousands of jobs. So if you go step by step, aero and commercial planes, they sell Rolls-Royce engines to Boeing. We've agreed to let Rolls-Royce engines and those kind of plane parts to come over tariff-free. And what you're going to hear today is there's going to be an announcement at the UK that they are buying $10 billion worth of Boeing planes later today. But I'm going to let the name of the airline announce it because that's theirs to do. But part of this deal was always to do it together and to do it strong. And you can see the numbers on this board. Everything about this board works exceptionally well for the United States of America. It lays out the plan that you can work with us in autos, you can work with us with aero and commercial, you can work with us in pharmaceuticals if you have a supply chain that is secure and protected in national security. So we feel really good about the deal. You've heard the Prime Minister, he feels really good about the deal, right? And we started at 10% and we ended at 10%. And the market for America is better. And this is a perfect example of why Donald Trump produced Liberation Day. People don't understand. He gets things done in a matter of time. This would have taken Jameson and I 3 years, maybe. And instead, we got it done in 45 days, certainly, because we work for Donald Trump. So Jameson, my partner in all this, maybe Jameson, you'd like to talk a little, and then we'll turn it over to the UK.
Sure, happy to do that. Everyone has great remarks. I just have to echo the President and the Prime Minister when we talk about VE Day. This is something we've been waiting for decades, and there's no more appropriate date to do this. And when we step back and we look back a few weeks from now or months from now or years from now, we're going to look back at this day and better appreciate the significance, I think. And I'll just say as well, in terms of negotiating, I mean, the UK negotiators, you know, we've got one right here, did an incredible job, right? This is why you win wars, right? When you act like this. And the ambassador, he knows more about trade than a lot of us here based on his background. And I would say on this deal, Mr. President, what we've shown is that it is time to change the way we do trade. People said we couldn't do a global tariff. We did a global tariff. They said no one would want to deal with us. People want to deal. They said no one give offers. You saw that stack of offers I showed you yesterday, all those countries. Said we wouldn't get deals, and here we are with the deal with the 6th largest economy. We've agreed to have fair and reciprocal trade, and we've done it in record time.
Thank you very much. Sir. Great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, please.
Well, Mr. President, thank you very much indeed in hosting us this morning. And thank you very much indeed also for that very typical 11th hour intervention by you with your phone call to the President, demanding even more out of this deal than any of us expected. So thank you for that. The Prime Minister was delighted, obviously, to take that call later tonight. But you took it to another level. And I think the point I would make is twofold. One is that if we're going to rebalance and rebuild international trade in a way that serves all our interests, then we're better doing that together than separately and apart. And that's what we're on a mission to do. But secondly, you've done what you said you would do. You said to the Prime Minister when he came and we visited in the Oval that you would do a good trade deal with the United Kingdom, that you would do it at pace, and that we would be first. And you have delivered that. You know, you've been true to your word. So thank you very much indeed for that. For us, it's not the end. It's it's the end just of the beginning. I mean, there is yet more we can do in reducing tariffs and trade barriers so as to open up our markets to each other even more than we're agreeing to do today. But it also provides us with the platform, the springboard, to do what I think will be even more valuable for both our countries in the future, and that's creating a technology partnership between the United States and the United Kingdom so that we can harness science and technology in order to create future industries and future jobs, and to do that together in the way we work so closely already in the national security and defense area. We can just take that to yet further areas of science, enterprise, and endeavor. So we're looking forward to doing that in the coming months. You've launched us extremely well today. It just, in my view, as the Prime Minister has said, just shows what two countries who trust each other, who are confident in each other and are familiar with each other can do, not just for ourselves, but for those, the rest of the world, who need to benefit from a bigger and better international trading system.
Thank you very much. It was beautifully stated. What a beautiful accent, too. I'd like to have that accent. Thank you.
My mother would be proud.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
James Buckley from Sky News.
Yes.
And can I ask,
Fine Britain and why now? And you described this deal as a full and comprehensive deal, and yet we've just heard from Mr. Magnuson, it's the end of the beginning. Clearly, there's much more work still to do. With respect, are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal because you're a president who needs a result at a difficult time?
I think that it's a great deal for both parties. It's for us. We're opened up. I didn't know how closed it was. Quite closed, the market, as you know, the UK, and it opens up a tremendous market for us, and it works out very well, very well. And a lot of assets. You see the chart, and those are tremendous assets. But we've been trying, and when you say why us, meaning your country, we've been trying for years, and they've been trying for years to make a deal, including when I was in the, first term. It would always be people talking, but they weren't getting it done. But for 25 years before that, they were trying always to make a deal, a very significant deal. I actually, until I looked at the numbers, I didn't realize this is a very conclusive deal, but we think we can grow it even from that. But this is a maxed out deal, not like you said it. You said it really incorrectly. This is a maxed out deal that we're going to make bigger, and we make it bigger through growth. But we have tremendous assets involved. I was surprised to see how big your country is in trade, actually. One of the biggest in technology and so many other things. It's agriculture. I really didn't know. It's depending on your definition, it's from 4 to 5 to 6. That's pretty big in the world. So I was very impressed by that. But we're going to take it to new levels. It's a very big deal right now, but I think it is going to grow just of its own volition. It's going to grow, and over time there'll be changes made. There'll be adjustments made because we're flexible. We'll see things that we can do even better. But it's very conclusive, and we think everyone's going to be happy, and the people of your country are going to be very impressed with the result, and they'll be able to buy from more people. They'll be able to price things differently. They'll be able to get some products that aren't available to them now that we make better than anybody in the world. And it's just something that it's a great thing that it came together. It's so nice because we have many countries want to make a deal, and many countries are very unhappy that we happen to choose this one, to be honest with you. But long time, our oldest ally, or just about. Guess a couple of people claim that too, but let's put it right at the top. I think it's going to be something very special for UK and special for the United States. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. How close are you to more deals, and when do you expect the next to be announced?
Well, very close. We have numerous deals. I know Howard's going back as soon as this is finished. Your press conference, he's got numerous. And Scott, who's right over here, who's fantastic, by the way. You were great on television this morning. I watched you. You gave them a little lesson in the world and economics. But Scott's going to be going to Switzerland, meeting with China, and they very much want to make a deal. We can all play games. Who made the first call? Who didn't make the? It doesn't matter. It only matters what happens in that room. But I will tell you that China very much wants to make a deal. We'll see how that works out. Every country throughout the last 40, 50 years has literally ripped off the United States on trade, on military, on protection, on all the different things. And we are now making fair deals. And in this case, it's great because we really weren't very much involved. You have the European Union, which is, I think you made the right decision years ago. I don't know if you remember, I was opening up Turnberry the day that you were voting. And they asked me, would it happen or would it not happen? I said, no, I think they're going to go their own separate way. I think it's better for them. And they did. I think it's going to end up being a very smart decision. But a big part of that decision was always that you'd be able to make a deal with the United States. And they were unable to do that. But now they made it. And it's a tremendous, it's very important. That was always a big part of your decision on Brexit. And they were never able to make that deal. It was a tough one. And this one it's amazing with time. This one just went very smoothly, went quickly and smoothly. And a lot of common sense, as I like to say. It's tremendous common sense, but it's going to make your country much bigger in terms of trade, and it's going to make our country much bigger in terms of trade too. Yes,
Thank you.
behind you.
Tom Bateman at the BBC. Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned meat.
You with who?
The BBC.
Oh, good. Very nice. They treat me beautifully.
You mentioned meat and beef exports. The UK currently doesn't accept American beef because of its own food standards. Are you calling on the UK to accept all American beef and chicken products?
Well, I think they'll take what they want. We have plenty of it. We have every type. We have every classification you can have. As you know, Bobby Kennedy is doing a tremendous job, and he's, I think, probably heading toward your system with no chemical, no this, no that. And I think we're heading that way. It seems to be. And but we have that also. So we're a very big country. We have a lot of beef. We're a very big country, so it'll be great. Yes, yes.
You want me to jump in?
Yes.
Let's talk about American beef really quickly, and it can't be understated. I'm Brooke Rollins, by the way. How important this deal is and what this means to American farmers and ranchers. Specific to the beef, this is going to exponentially increase our beef exports. And to be very clear, American beef is the safest, the best quality, and the crown jewel of American agriculture for the world. So I think a really important part of this deal isn't just the ethanol reducing of tariffs from 19 to 0, which for our row croppers is a huge deal, but also for beef. And as we move forward, I know our incredible trade team is looking at all of the meats, all of the produce, really all of our agriculture exports. And I don't know if there's an industry that has been treated more unfairly and has suffered more than our agriculture industry. So we look forward to, I'll be in the UK on Monday, talking to my counterpart over there for next week, and look forward to moving that out across the country. The president is
I think
incredible.
we could say that we have the best in the world, best tractors, the best everything in the world. And they say that our agriculture is, second to none, you understand. And it'll be a great asset. People are going to be able to have options, choice, and they'll have more of it. And that usually means lower prices. How about we'll do you and then you? Go ahead.
Follow-up question for the Italian TV, Daniele Compatangelo, LA7, TV 2000, Primetime Media. So congratulations for the deal. We'll see a big revenues from the chart. But what's the rest of Europe? It's a victory day, but other European countries, it seems like they're losing the train.
We intend to make a deal with Europe. We have found that the European Union treated us extremely unfairly, very difficult, and hurt themselves in doing so. And they very much want to make a deal. We'll be dealing with them. We are dealing with them currently. So that'll cover pretty much the rest of it. But this was separate because of Brexit in particular. This was a separate deal. It always seems so natural. I mean, all the media would say that this seemed to be like, why did this happen 25 years? Why didn't it happen a long time ago? And it was always amazing to me. Somebody would say, hey, we got to make a deal. We have to make a deal. But this deal just fell into place. The prime minister did a fantastic job. His representatives are total professionals and they got along well. And it just seemed to work. And I think one of the reasons it did is because we blew up the whole system. If we would have just been dealing with you separately or, country by country, we blew up the whole system. It was very fair to very unfair to the United States. And I think because of that, this worked out so nicely. And I'm honored that it was the first deal. Please.
Sir, you mentioned.
Well, why don't you go in the back? Yes.
Oh, thanks. I'm with the London Times. I'll say this is a great day for James Bond because now Aston Martins will be available to American buyers. But will it be even better by extending it to film? You've talked about a big tariff on films, and we'd like to know if there'd be relief on British.
Well, we're going to have a discussion on that separately. And as you know, we're putting tariffs on that particular film, you said, the movie makers. And we're going to be doing some tariffs to get them because a lot of them have left this country. They all live here. The money comes from here. Everything comes from here, but they make them in other countries. So we're going to do something to bring them back, maybe to a large extent. But James Bond has nothing to worry about that, I can tell you. James Bond. And, Sean Connery was a friend of mine. Sean Connery was responsible for my getting zoning in Aberdeen. He said, let the bloody bloke build his golf courses. And, I was like 4 years into the process, and it was impossible in Aberdeen. And I don't know, he just stood up one day and he said that. As soon as he said that, I got the approvals in about 2 minutes. So he was a great guy, Sean Connery, and great character.
Later in the year, are you going to Scotland and to the?
Yeah, I will be. Sure. It's good. We have a lot of investment over there. We have Turnberry, Aberdeen. We have, as you know, in Doonbeg in Ireland, right on the ocean. They're all on the ocean. I only have interest if they're on the ocean, and we have good investments over there. Been beautiful. Yes.
Mr. President, if the talks go well this weekend between Secretary Bessent and Ambassador Greer with their Chinese counterparts, not preemptively, but if the talks go well, would you then consider lowering?
Did we hit Bitcoin? Did we get 100? Hold on. Did we get 100? Did it get there? Or it's about to get there? Or did it touch 100? I missed it if it touched 100. Where's Hoodie? Hoodie's at 53.38. Looks like Bitcoin likes what's going on. We are very close. Did we hit 100 today? No, we hit 99,923. We were $70 away from 100. Let's see if we get back there, but we did not literally hit 100 yet, but we are pretty close.
The tariff rate on China.
Well, it could be. I mean, we're going to see. Right now, you can't get any higher. It's at 145, so we know it's coming down. I think we're going to have a very good relationship. You know, I always got along very well with President Xi. That relationship was greatly disturbed by COVID when COVID came in, but we get along very well now. I mean, the relationship was hurt with a lot of people, a lot of countries when COVID came in. But I think we're going to have a very good relationship. I expect to have a very good relationship with China, Scott. I think it's a very friendly meeting. They look forward to doing it in an elegant way. China, as you know, has a tremendous trade surplus with us, and we just can't have that. And but I think it's going to be very good for both countries. I would like to see China opened. You know, one of the big things here is, and nobody would know this, but the UK was largely closed. It was very.
All right, you guys are saying we hit 100K. I missed it. I did not see it. I think we'll get back there. I mean, we're basically there at 99,931. So a lot of brokerages and exchanges have different prices, but it seems like for the majority of you, we did hit Bitcoin. I think this press conference is going to end in like 5 minutes, and then we'll recap what he said. But markets so far not really tanking on this. Markets actually liking the deal we got done today. S&P 500 right here, up almost 1%. We got green candles across the board based on this trade deal.
Pretty much closed to trade, and now it's opened. And a lot of the financial reporters are very happy about that because so much. I've listened to them. Well, I hope they get countries opened up, and then you compete on a fair basis. But you can't compete when you're not allowed to go there. China would be the number one example of that. You know, it's very closed. We almost had it last time before COVID, and that didn't work out. But we made a great deal with China. They had to buy $50 billion worth of our food products, and it was a great deal, doing very well for our farmers. And then when Biden came in, as usual, nothing happened. You know, he didn't enforce it, and it got less, and ultimately, you know, destroyed a great deal. That was a great deal. But no, I think that we're going to have a good weekend with China. I think they have a lot to gain. I do think they have far more to gain than we do in a sense, but we're going to have I think we're going to have a very good weekend.
Will you speak to Xi after the weekend talks?
I might. Yeah, sure. Depending on what, Scott.
All right, there she is. There she is. Wow. Congrats to anyone who's in Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, Hood, Coinbase. I mean, what a freaking run. This thing did not tank with the NASDAQ back on Liberation Day. It went the opposite of what a lot of the traditional assets that it's pegged to tend to do. When they go down, Bitcoin goes down at a beta of about 2.5x against them. Bitcoin went the opposite. It went flat for the majority of that time, and now it is surging way higher than what they are doing. Absolutely incredible. 100,000 is back right here for Bitcoin.
Says we Scott is doing certain countries and say, because we understand the countries, we understand what the country said or whatever it may be. I think we should explain it now. One of the things we did here that we'll rarely do is on cars, we took it from 25 to 10 on Rolls-Royce because Rolls-Royce is not going to be built here. I wouldn't even ask them to do that. You know, it's a very special car, and it's a very limited number too. It's not, you know, one of the monster car companies that makes millions of cars. They make a very small number of cars that are super luxury, and that includes Bentley and Jaguar. So we have some very special cars. So in order to help that industry, and that's really, handmade stuff. They've been doing it for a long time in the same location. And I said, yeah, that would be good. Let's help them out with that one. But that's different than a car company that comes out and makes millions of cars, which they'll be doing in our country. They're going to build, we have many, many factories, car plants being built or going to be built very soon. I think we can say that we'll be close to $10 trillion of investment. I think we're actually at that number now if you add up some of the ones we haven't heard about yet. I mean, we have some going up right now. They have plants going up and they haven't even spoken to us. They're doing it because of the tariffs. And tariffs have always been used against us. And I never understood. I used to sit back. As you know, China paid hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs when I was president. But until then, China never paid anything. And, they really did a big number on us from the standpoint of trade. But we are using tariffs now for our benefit. And we have now close to $10 trillion. Think of that, 10 trillion. If you look at the past administration, and we're talking about over, essentially 2 months, because we could say 3, but it took a little while to get the office in perfect shape, right? It took a little while to get things done. But once we started, when you think of that, close to $10 trillion of investment, you've had years where the United States wouldn't do that wouldn't do 1 trillion in a year, wouldn't do anywhere near 1 trillion. We did 10 trillion in 2 months. So it's amazing what's happening. We're getting calls from, and that has to do with chips, has to do with cars. We used to make chips. We had Intel, and we used to make chips. We had a monopoly on chips. Everything was made here. And now, over a period of years, because of presidents that didn't know what they were doing, they allowed that business to be stolen from us. Most of it moved to Taiwan. And you probably were in the same position, right? Because you had a lot of the chip making capacity, but they moved it in. And if we would have said, that's fine. If you want to move it to Taiwan, that's good. But if you want to sell back into the United States, we're going to put a 50% or 100% tariff on. They would have never left. But we had people sitting here that didn't understand that. And it's too bad. But now they're coming back because I'm saying it about 40 years too late. But they're coming back. As you know, we have the biggest chip makers in the world spending, in one case, 300 billion, in one case, 500 billion, same as Apple, and in another case, 200 billion. And we're going to have a large share, a very, very substantial share of the chip making market.
You said that this weekend is going to be a friendly visit, but do you expect that it will just be a formality to break the ice, or are they going to get into substantive negotiations?
I believe so, yes. I believe it's substantive, yes. I think people like to say, yes, we're having a meeting to meet. Well, we're meeting, so what are we going to do? Talk about meeting again? So I think it's going to be substantive. I think we can say that.
Palantir 118, folks. We've got a market that really is moving. We'll get into it once he's done, but we've got a market that is liking what they're hearing.
Right, Scott? Very substantive. Now, China wants to do something. And look, they have to at this point. Essentially, they made $1 trillion a year, and now they have absolutely, no business because of the tariffs. They have no business, and they want to have business, and we want them to have business. We want them to do well. We want them to do very well. So I think it's going to be very substantive.
Because business has slowed down, as you mentioned.
In China.
But we're seeing as a result, the ports here in the U.S., the traffic has really slowed, and now thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are worried about their jobs.
Yeah, no, that means we lose less money. When I see that, that means we lose less money. Look, China was making over $1 trillion, 1.1 trillion, in my opinion. Different numbers from 500 billion to $1 trillion or $1 trillion. I think it was 1.1 trillion. And frankly, if we didn't do business, we would have been better off. Okay, you understand that. So when you say it slowed down, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But we're going to make it so they can, I'd like to say they can do better, actually, in terms of the bottom line. We'd like to see China opened up so we can compete in China and, give people something that they've never had, access to something. That'd be great for the world. It would be great for our businesses. And I think it would be great for friendship. I really expect a lot of people think I'm a militant guy. I'm really not. I think that trade can bring a greater friendship with China. It can be something good. But, one of the things that I know Scott's going to be talking about very high on the list is open up and let our businesses go into China, because when you talk about a closed country, that's a really closed country. And I think it would be great if it was opened up, give people a lot of choice, and would create a lot of jobs, a lot of everything. So I think it would be a great thing for China. And that's going to be one of the things we'll be discussing, like we discussed with UK. Yeah, please.
But what does Britain have to do for you to drop the baseline 10%
Tesla 287.
tariff?
Well, I think that's set because that has to do with a lot of different things, including past. There are a lot of past things that we talk. This is very inclusive. We included everything, and that's pretty well set. Yeah, please.
Yeah, Mr. President, the 10% baseline tariff remaining in place, is that a template for these future trade deals? You say
No.
you're going to keep it here.
No.
Is it going to stay in every case?
No, that's a low number. They made a good deal. Some will be much higher because they have massive trade surpluses, and in many cases they didn't treat us right. One thing with UK, they had somewhat closed, not like a China as an example, but they always treated us with great respect. They treated us with great respect. The template of 10 is probably the lowest end, and therefore they made that deal. But they we've had just a very special relationship with them. Like, I won't do that deal with cars. I mean, unless somebody shows me that there's another kind of a car that's comparable to a Rolls Royce. And there aren't too many. This is a good commercial for Rolls Royce. They're going to order a lot of cars.
Mr. President, I wonder whether you'd like to buy.
I mean, well, the last time this happened, I ended up.
I would be happy to suggest a discount, obviously a very modest discount. We have to protect our profit margins.
I've had many of them, actually. The last time that happened, I ended up buying a Tesla.
Thank you. Mary Margaret Oldham with Daily Wire. I had a question about the UK deal today. I heard there was talk that part of the agreement would depend on whether the UK would respect free speech and freedom of religion. I know the VP is really interested in that, talked about that earlier this year. Was there any assurances that you guys got on that front?
You want to handle that?
Yeah, that was not part of the conversation. Our conversation was an economic conversation from start to finish, closed by the president yesterday.
I like that. They're not worrying about anything else other than trade deal. I mean, Trump probably realized, you know what, we can't push them too far on this. We got to get a deal done. And so they didn't focus on anything else in regards to social stuff. They just focused on trade.
This was a business deal, open their markets and also protect their workers, grow our markets, and help our workers.
This was about business religion. Business is sort of a semi-religion, but not nearly as important. I don't want to get myself into Go ahead, in the back.
Mr. President, will you be asking China to help you close, the gap between Ukraine and Russia?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's a natural thing to ask.
What do you expect?
Sure. I don't know. I think we're making good progress. The fighting is a little bit different than it was. I think if we weren't involved, Russia would be, going at it to maybe get the whole thing. Without our involvement, they'd be able to get it, because we supplied a lot of different things foolishly, but we've been sort of paid back by doing the rare earth deal that I talked about before. I think that I think that we will be very much involved in trying to get that bloodbath. It's a bloodbath. It's a horrible situation. 5,000. It's really more than that, but it's 5,000 soldiers on average a week. Mostly soldiers are being killed. Young, beautiful people. I mean, they're being killed. I see the satellite pictures coming back, body parts lying all over fields, heads and arms. It's so terrible. I've never seen anything like it, actually. And if we can get that stopped, that will be a great accomplishment. And we're trying very hard. And I think we're close. And Mr. Witkoff is talking constantly back and forth. He's a real professional who's got a great relationship with both countries. And I think we have a good chance. And likewise, we're trying to work on Iran to get that solved without having to get into any bombing, as we say, big bombing. I don't want to do that. I want them to work a deal. I want them to be very successful.
Mr. President, Edward Lawrence from Fox Business. On the non-market barriers, how did you get the UK to bend, and what was the 11th hour deal or ask?
Well, I think it was really just a part of the overall. I mean, they have so many things that are so good for them. It's going to be so good for the country. And that was sort of easy. It wasn't, We had non-market, I call it non-market or non-monetary trade barriers. And we have quite a few of them, not nearly as bad as some countries. Some countries have, they have virtually no tariff, but the rest of it is so brutal you can't do business with them, right? So it's a very important question, actually. No, I think the overall deal just worked out very well from their standpoint. They were willing to give that in order to get other things, and you might want to speak to that, Mr. Ives.
Look, the point about the deal is that we will continue reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers. This is a continuing picture. It's a movie. It's not a still picture here. It's a movie.
Yeah.
It continues. And we're both committed to freeing up trade between our countries. We're both committed to freeing up investment between our countries. And the point about this deal is that it provides a very good template and a very good launch pad for what we can continue to do and build on in the future. And that's what we're both determined to do.
Many of the, well, I better not say.
Between us.
Many of these, we'll keep it confidential. How about just one more little thing, right? It got the deal closed, and it was handled very well from the other side too. But many of these things that we're talking about, we've been talking about this for 25 years. It's hard to explain when, if you weren't sitting behind this beautiful Resolute desk, you just wouldn't get it. I have been hearing about making a deal with UK for 25 years. And especially around the time of Brexit, they wanted to make a deal. So they came out of Brexit and they make a deal, and how natural. And it just couldn't be done. It couldn't be done. Good people. And this is a bigger deal. This is a much bigger, better, stronger deal for both of us than we ever even contemplated before. It's a big deal.
Virtually everyone said that it would end in failure, it would end in tears, and it's ended in exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
But Mr. President, can I say that is due to Secretary Lutnick and Ambassador Greer, who've been absolutely fantastic. But
Right.
yesterday I received a call, a very diplomatic call that just edged things over the line, and that was from your new ambassador in the United Kingdom.
Who is terrific.
Warren Stevens, he's here.
Where is Warren?
Right here.
And
Hello, Warren.
he's flying to London tomorrow night. He's going to be very popular with the British people. He's going to be a very successful ambassador.
And he's got plenty of cash. That guy's plenty of cash.
We need some more big spenders.
You're going to go ahead fast.
Yeah, are you planning to meet Ursula von der Leyen, the president, or do you plan to cancel anytime soon?
Oh, she's so fantastic, right? She's so fantastic. I hope we're going to meet. Yeah, the answer is yes. I saw her a few days ago. And I think that we'll definitely meet, yeah. The European Union to deal with the United States. And we're doing that, and we're going to make fair deals. I'm just honored that this was the first one. Go ahead, please.
The Federal Reserve Chairman, Mr. President, said that you would have to call him for a meeting. Do you plan to meet with him? And what do you think about?
It's like talking to a wall. He should be.
What do you think about not cutting the Bank of England cut?
Well, the Bank of England cut, China cut, everybody's cutting but him. It's I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's a shame. I call him Too Late, Too Late Powell. That's his nickname, and it's a shame. It's ridiculous. So meeting, he's always too late. But in this case, it's not going to matter that much because our country is so strong. We're so powerful in terms of economic strength and what we've done. And I'll tell you what, if we didn't have our first term, you wouldn't be. We created things in the first term. We cut more regulations than any president in history. We cut the taxes more than anybody in history. And a very big factor is going to be the tax bill that we have right now, the one big beautiful bill, as we call it, which is all encompassing, the biggest tax cuts ever in history, bigger than even the first time. And the incentives, even great for the UK, because it'll make us so strong that we're going to be doing more business with you. It's a very important element for taxes, for every aspect, regulation cuts. That bill is, I believe it's the biggest bill of its kind ever in the history of this country. And Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune have done an incredible job. I mean, I'll let you know, we have to get a vote, but we have a lot of support for that bill. And if that happens on top of all of these trade deals that we're doing, this country will hit a point that you better go out and buy stock now. Let me tell you, this country will be like a rocket ship that goes straight up. This is going to be numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That's a very important element of all of this. You know, if we get that, if you don't, and the Democrats are fighting it only because they want to fight. They have Trump derangement syndrome. You know, if it was somebody else, they wouldn't fight. If you had a normal person, if you had some stiff sitting behind you, they'd be fine. But they have Trump derangement syndrome. You know, Senator Schumer's become a Palestinian. He's welcome. I don't know when they're going to give him the ceremony, whatever the ceremony may be. But it's terrible what's happened to the Democrats. So very, very important element of everything, of what we're doing. Unrelated to today, but related in the sense that we'll do, if that passes, we'll do even more business with the UK. We'll have so much. It's the biggest tax cut in history. It's going to make our country zoom. It's going to be incentive, as you know, with the deduction for basically for work. You work, you build, you plant, etc. Your deduction. It's going to be the biggest. It's the biggest bill of its kind ever passed. Maybe the biggest bill ever passed. That's why we call it the one big beautiful bill.
You just announced a new nominee for the U.S. Surgeon General who never finished her residency.
I'm very proud today. We're disappointed, but that's the way it works sometimes. You know, that's the way it works. And he wasn't rejected, but we felt it would be hard. And we have somebody.
Okay, I think we got pretty much everything from Trump. I think this is ending in like another 2 minutes. The main stuff he wanted to say about the trade deal was talked about. And that last statement, he says, as we keep getting trade deals, you better go out and buy stocks now. I mean, well, it looks like people are buying stocks. Robin Hoodie, 54.40, 8.84% on the day. Palantir trying to get back to where it was right before earnings, 118.45. That's up 7.2%. And then the broader S&P 500 trying to get back to that 200-day moving average of 570. We're up 1.39%. It would not surprise me if we see 570 later to end the day, given this momentum. Now, could people sell into the strength? Yep, that could happen. But I mean, we'll talk about the trade deal in a second with the UK. If that type of a deal gets replicated over and over again. And what do I mean by that? I mean, they keep the 10% tariff on whatever country they're working with, but they get some concessions like they got today with ethanol, machinery, and beef. I mean, there's a world where the market eats that up. There is a world where the market eats that up. Nvidia is at 118. Freaking Bitcoin, which is one of the reasons why Robinhood's pumping, 101, folks. 101 on Bitcoin. I mean, this is pretty incredible. This is pretty freaking incredible. Congratulations to everybody today. We got to see how this day ends, but so far we are pretty damn green. Now, what was my take on this announcement? Honestly, dude, I thought this was good. I thought this was really good. I didn't know what to expect today, and I know the trade deal is not literally final yet. In the next couple of weeks, they're going to make it final. But I thought Lutnick actually did a good job. His explanation of the incentive structure that the UK has with the United States, his analysis on why we were able to keep that 10% deal, and also the reasoning around steel and aluminum being a core part of the UK industry, especially when it comes to the automotive sector. I think he actually did a really good job explaining it. I really do. And, you know, stocks are reacting positively right now, and anything could happen over the next coming weeks, and we definitely need more deals to keep this going. But we kept the 10% tariff on them. We got billions of dollars of ethanol and beef. We got new market access for machines in terms of the industrial part of the United States and chemicals. And then you got Trump saying the UK is going to remove non-tariff barriers that discriminated against U.S. products, a lot of those being in the chemical and U.S. machinery part of the sector. I mean, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Lutnick. I think a lot of times he says stuff that's just like not making a lot of sense. And some, you know, he puts words together that it's just weird, kind of the arguments he makes. But on today's trade deal, and it looks like he's the one who was central to negotiating it, UK's trade representative was giving him a lot of credit at the end by saying, hey, it's because of Senator Lutnick that we were able to really get a good deal done. It seems like he got into the ears of the representatives of the UK, was able to sit down with them, meaningfully come up with a win-win proposal for both sides. And as a result, the market is acting pretty excited because of that. Tesla trying to get back to 290. That's up 5%. Robinhood right here, 54.42. Palantir, 118.56. Let me check real quick resistance on Hood at 55 and Palantir at 119. Hood 55 resistance is, HIMS, by the way, down about 5%. 65,000 shares for Hood. And then for Palantir, we get back to 120 on Palantir, that would be absolutely incredible. 119 resistance is 27,000 shares on Palantir. Not too crazy. Even Google, which had one of its worst days since 2024 yesterday, 155, kind of basically getting to where it was yesterday. I think 157 was where it's at, so it's very close. 155 right here on the Googs. The Qs are green. Tech index, look at that, up 2%, almost back to 500. The S&P would not surprise me if we touch 570. We are very close, 569.34. Even Nvidia, 118, that's up about 1%. Microsoft, 442. Haven't seen 442 or above 440 in about 8 months on Microsoft. Grab right here is at 492. Roblox at 71.35. SMCI goes from red to green. Eli Lilly still down 3%, but that was down almost 5%. Archer right here is at 880. Enphase at 47.18. On all the semis, we've got green across the board. AMD 103, that's outperforming Nvidia, and then Broadcom is up 1.43%. And then in terms of the Bitcoin crypto plays, you got Bitcoin at 101, Hoodie at 54, BITX 2x Bitcoin, that's at 50.64, Coinbase 5.8%, MicroStrategy 419. When's the last time we saw freaking MicroStrategy at 419? It's been a while. The VIX is down today. How much is the VIX down? The VIX is down 5%, 2238. Looking like that can go hopefully below 30. CleanSpark's up 10%, Marathon's up 8%, Riot is up 10%, and then Coinbase right here up 5.3%. Absolutely incredible, dude. Really, really incredible. I know we didn't get all the details in the world on this trade deal, but I think they did a pretty good job explaining the core elements of it. And it looked really amicable. It looked really friendly. It looked like the trade representatives wanted to be there. You saw Trump that was making jokes. I mean, he felt like he had control over the room. He was chilling. He wasn't like being hostile or aggressive. It was one of those meetings where if we get more like that over the coming weeks, especially with trade partners that are way bigger than the UK, then I think the market's going to eat it up. I think the market's going to be very excited to see if we can actually get those deals done.
That is the president in the Oval Office announcing some details about that trade agreement with the UK. Stocks have been reacting fairly constructively. Session highs were above the April 2 close of 56.70 and not quite to the highs of last week of 5,700. Let's get to Megan Casella, talk a bit about framing of that deal. Megan.
Fear and greed, by the way, at 62. We are officially in greed. We were at greed yesterday at 57. Now we're at 62. So, I mean, for those that want to buy some puts, take some profits, sell some covered calls. When you get to greed, you tend to take a little bit off the table, but we are definitely not in extreme fear anymore. We have erased completely the April 2nd Liberation Day lows, and we are back to maybe reclaiming that 200-day moving average.
And then trying to raise some expectations for the conversations in Geneva this weekend.
Absolutely, Carl. Those are the two biggest takeaways. The first, on the UK side, the news they were there to announce, a little bit more substantive than I think some people had been expecting. We did get some meat on the bones of this framework. They were announcing increased market access for U.S. exports, particularly in agriculture as well as industrials. They also say the UK will be fast-tracking American goods. The U.S. is keeping its...
We'll get right back to that, but folks, we got 119. We got 119 on Palantir. I think it's time to ring the bell for the entire day. 119 on Palantir, Bitcoin 101, Robinhood 54. This is why we invest for days like this. If we tank now, don't blame my damn bell, because half of you want me to ring the bell, half of you don't want me to ring the bell. I think it was time to finally ring the bell. We haven't rang it all week. We rang the bell. There you go, 119 on Palantir. Pretty damn incredible. Again, this momentum, I mean, dude, I didn't expect this much momentum today. Robinhood looking like it wants to get to 55. Palantir trying to get now back to, I mean, it was at 119.15 for a second, right back down to the low 119s. Maybe we make a run for 120. Let me quickly check resistance at 120. And then the S&P 500 right here up about 1.5%. 120 resistance on Palantir is 131,000 shares. 131,000 shares for Palantir. Robinhood right there at 54. The Qs are pumping. S&P 1.42, and then the Qs right here 491. Gold is down 2%, 1.5% on gold. So you're seeing the market say, you know what, we're getting out of this safety trade. We're getting back into stocks, getting more risk on. The 10-year currently right now as well is up because people are selling bonds to get back into the markets. And that's why we're seeing the S&P up about 1.5%.
10% baseline tariff in place against almost all imports from the United Kingdom with few exceptions. So very key detail there that is remaining in place, even as the UK in exchange is lowering a number of their tariffs. There's also a steel and aluminum trading union that will involve tariffs and quotas on those two metals. On the UK side, what they get is economic security alignment with the United States. They'll get a quota of 100,000 cars get to come into the US without paying a tariff. Then the tariff kicks back into place. And no tariffs on Rolls-Royce plane engines, jet engines, and other plane parts as well. The UK is also committing to buying a certain amount of goods from Boeing. And we did see the Boeing stock jump up.
Boeing's up 3%. UK is buying $10 billion worth of Boeing airplanes. That's another big concession. So Boeing doing very well off that news, and that's another big win for American air manufacturers.
On that as well. Now, what was crucial here too is that both sides, both the president and the UK prime minister who dialed into this call, to this meeting, said that they are continuing to hammer out the final details here. So the president even acknowledged it could change a little bit because he says he's flexible. So we could have something of a long runway before we see the ultimate details really hammered out. They do both say they've been building on and that this is the culmination of the US-UK free trade agreement that was launched 5 years ago now. So much more paperwork, many more details to come. Then on the China side, really substantial here. The president did say that he was asked if he would lower tariffs against China if talks go well this weekend. And he seemed open to that. He said, well, it could be, we're going to see. Right now, you can't get any higher. It's at 145%. So we know it's coming down. That, to me, is the first time we've heard that from the president. Repeatedly in the last week, he said he would not lower tariffs just to get China to the negotiating table. Now he's saying maybe he would do it depending on how the talks this weekend go. He also says he expects talks will be substantive and that it will be a friendly meeting. So a lot of pressure there for Scott Bessent and Jamieson Greer, both of whom are in the Oval Office right now and who will be going to Switzerland in a couple days. Guys.
Dude, Trump is still live. This guy's not done. The thing is still live right now.
From another country. I said, why is that? And they were, they're not into business, but they're just saying our system doesn't work, sir. And I said, boy, that's pretty sad. But we were all set to give it out to, look, you have.
So apparently he's still live. He's talking. Palantir right there, just below that 119 level, looking like it's trying to get back there to 119. Apparently, while we were looking at stocks, I have a quote. I believe this is accurate. Trump said, "Now the market's really going to rally." "Quote unquote." Now the market's really going to. Wow, Palantir 119.15. Yeah. The quote is, "Stock market will really rally now." All right, so we missed that when we were looking at stocks, but I think that's probably, he said that 4 minutes ago. So, oh my goodness. There you go, 119.20 on Palantir. Hood is at 54.37, trying to get back to that 55 level, but really seeing a lot of momentum. Meta at 605, Google's at 156, Amazon 192, SoFi 1334. SoFi's up 2.5% as well. Meta trying to crack their 290, or Tesla trying to crack their 290, stuck at 289. But it is showing some strength. Nvidia relatively flat. Nvidia not moving that much. I think the market's more concerned about Nvidia earnings, but everything else is getting momentum. AppLovin, which had a big earnings yesterday, they're up 13%. So some of these plays continuing to see strength. Palantir 119.18. Maybe we are going to see 120. I put in the chat, who trusts this green? 67% of you say yes, 33% no, say no. Here's my thing. I'll give the bull and the bear case. The bear case for not trusting this green is that we don't get any trade deals over the coming weeks outside of the UK. And we kind of flatline on deals and the market kind of fades it, along with the fact that we might get some bad consumer data, jobs data, et cetera. That could be a reason for why, maybe it's a little bit frothy. The reason to trust the green is if this causes an avalanche of deals with South Korea, Japan, India. I think India is coming up really soon from all the reports that I've been reading. And then eventually China, hopefully by the end of June or early July. And earnings are decent and inflation's coming down and maybe Jay Powell realizes it's time to cut rates. That's where I think you would trust this green. So whether it's Trump's stock market or Biden's stock market, we are definitely seeing some momentum right here. And You got stocks that are trying to reclaim some of their previous highs that they had before the Liberation Day announcements.
Yeah, he said we're going to have a good weekend. On the level of investment commitments that he says the U.S. has received, this $10 trillion figure that he trotted out a moment ago, it's going to be very hard for us to break that down, is it not?
Absolutely. It's always difficult to know with any of these investment announcements how much of that was already in place, was already planned. It's very difficult to track those once they're coming in. So the president says $10 billion, yes, from Boeing and that sort of thing, and that we're hearing all of these from all different companies. We do our best to track these and we'll continue to do that. But we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. But something certainly to keep in mind, as with all of this, we have to see, are they actually following through to allow in American beef and ethanol and chicken? Poultry, as you might know, is always a sticky subject. And some of the British reporters had a number of questions about how much U.S. chicken would be allowed in, because European consumers and British consumers in the past haven't wanted to see that. So the commitments are one thing, the follow through is another.
Now, one thing that's really important here is like the UK definitely was the easiest of the deals that we could have announced, right? We have a surplus with them. We are relatively friendly with the United Kingdom. And we should be able to get an easy win off this. But I think that's kind of the strategy here, right? Is like, let's get some easy wins before we get over the big ones. Let's show the market that we have the capacity to be able to set up the structure for a deal to work. And then we can try to go after the big ones like India, South Korea, China, Australia, etc. Pounds right here, 119.25. But if we needed a good first deal, especially a good first deal from a media perspective, aka everyone in a room together calmly explaining what's going on, I think they nailed it. I really do. I think they nailed it. I mean, this was not one of those press conferences where it was like they don't know what they're talking about, nothing like that. I mean, I think Lutnick really did explain in some pretty good detail the dynamics of this deal. It was an easy one for him to get, but nonetheless, they got it. And as long as this is carried through for the other deals that we've got coming up over the coming weeks, hopefully, over the coming days, then we're going to see a lot more momentum maybe in the markets. Now, one thing that a lot of people thought was that this was priced in. And I agree. I think a lot of this stuff was priced in. But then when Trump's talking about you should go buy stocks, Trump saying the market's going to rally, Trump saying, hey, we got a lot more deals down the pipeline. I mean, when all of that is something that he's saying and you start to see Boeing get a $10 billion offer, like you start getting the market, I think, to get excited that we're seriously going to get progress on this. And obviously that's going to be much better for the broader United States. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Nice to see what we've got going on right here. There was a lot of glazing in the Oval Office. I will say that they were, a lot of, we couldn't have got this done without Trump, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, that's why they're in the administration. Their whole goal is to be able to prop up the president of the United States. That's why they want to be there. And, there is an argument as well that Trump probably made some calls to really get the deal through the finish line. But with the UK, it was one that theoretically, if we couldn't get a deal with the UK, we were never going to get a deal with any other country. Now that we got this deal done, regardless of who got it done or how it got done, the market likes that we are getting deals done. And that's why we're seeing some momentum right here. Did Trump actually say that? Fed Chair Jerome Powell won't cut rates because he's not in love with me. Did he actually say that? I mean, he was having fun at the end, dude, when he was laughing about it. And he was like, it was a bit more calm. It wasn't as aggressive, which is also why I think the markets are kind of thinking that maybe we're going to get some more momentum. 119.40 on Palantir. We are seeing some momentum here. I think 120 has a shot. Got about 100,000 shares waiting for us to get there. Also, we were at 120 what is it? Basically, 2 days ago, 3 days ago? So not too bad. Not too bad. Again, this was the biggest thing I think we've been talking about for the past couple of days. It's like we need deals. We erased all the April lows, and that was really nice, but it doesn't really matter until we get deals to solidify that the markets have the momentum to keep moving forward. And today was the first of hopefully many. But we got the first one done. Although Ethereum, bro, freaking Ethereum, like this thing never moves. It's up 8% on the day, above 2,000. I mean, that's how you know we are starting to get some real bullish excitement. Bitcoin just below 101 at 100.983. Bitcoin, the first time we are hitting 100, I believe, if I'm not wrong, let me pull this up. I believe it is since February, or even before that. Last time we were at 100 was, February 1st, around that range. Around that early February time, we were at 101, and then we just proceeded to go back down, and now we are right back there here on the day. Tesla as well, getting some momentum. They talked a lot about Rolls Royces and cars and stuff like that, so it looks like the automotive sector, they both came to conclusions that would be beneficial for jobs and stability. I think they reduced that 25% tariff down to 10% for automotives as well, which is really good for the UK. Tesla right here, 288.87. That's up 4.5% currently right now. Yeah, it's 12 p.m., dude. I didn't even notice it's 12 p.m. This has been a crazy morning. Robin at 54.12, and then Palantir, dude. I think she wants 120. I think she wants it. 119.69, 120, 110,000 shares. Dude, that's pretty incredible because, again, those earnings were good. I did a daily recap yesterday, video yesterday talking about my thoughts on earnings as well, but they weren't Nvidia level earnings. So the fact that Palantir is basically getting to break even for where it was before earnings, I know it was at like 125, but still trying to get back to that 120 is pretty exceptional. And I think that's a lot of momentum that is being added to the name simply because people want exposure to it if we end up turning into a full-on bull market. Not bad. Not bad at all. You got Palantir here at 119, Nvidia relatively flat, and the S&P 500 is at 568, up 1.36%. This is game time now. This is game time. The next few weeks are going to be pivotal to figure out if we can trust this market. There have been many, how you can say, bear market rallies throughout the history of volatile movements, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't try. I mean, the hedge funds, right? We looked at the data. The hedge funds short positioning is the highest since 2022. There's a lot of toots that don't believe that this is real, and retail has been consistently buying the dip. So if the toots, the hedge funds, the money managers have to come in and say, you know what, we faded this entire rally. We can't afford to not perform because, you know, we're just not going to be able to keep our jobs. If Trump ends up pumping all these trade deals, we kind of have to have some exposure. You're going to get a lot of big money entering in, piling in, compounding on the momentum. And that's just going to take stock prices even higher. And then if you get a good Q2, Q3 when it comes to earnings, you get the tariff volatility to die down. I mean, there might be a shot, like a real shot, that this ends up becoming a full-on bull market for 2025. Granted, I still think we're not out of the woods. There's a lot of volatility that we've got going on. This UK deal isn't even finalized. It's just, you know, the framework of it being finalized. China is the big one that we got to get done. But now, I mean, even what do you guys hear what Trump said at the end of that thing? He said it doesn't matter who makes the first call. Let's just get a deal done when he was asked about China. I think even Trump is just like, I don't care anymore. He's like, you know what? Like when Kris was on, we showed that clip of Trump saying, oh, China should go back and reassess who made the first call. And then at the end of this press conference, he's like, it doesn't matter who makes the first call. Let's just get a deal done. I think even Trump is like, you know what? The market is loving this right now. We got a deal done. Let's get more deals done. Let's get back to everyone loving me and thinking I'm the best business-friendly president ever. Let's just get this damn deal done. Let's get it over with. And so I think if that's the tone he's going to have and we get more deals, then, you know, maybe that continues to have a lot of momentum for the broader markets. Not bad at all. All right. I think we're ending the show here today. On Thursday at the market close today, we will have money market inflows. That's going to be important. We're going to have money market inflows. So we're going to see how much money left money market funds and hopefully came into stocks. 15 billion over the past couple of weeks came from money market flows, maybe into crypto equities, relatively minuscule amount compared to the 7.04 trillion that we have on the sidelines. Maybe a more substantial amount of that money left money market funds this week. We have Besant meeting in Switzerland with China this weekend, May 9th to May 12th. He's probably getting ready to head on a private jet to Switzerland right now. And we have that catalyst to look forward to. And then today, after the bell, it is going to be literal insanity. Coinbase, Rocket Lab, SoundHound, Trade Desk, Cloudflare, DraftKings, Transmedics, Marathon, Affirm, Lyft, Pinterest, Toast, Monster, CleanSpark, HubSpot, Service or Serve Robotics, Dropbox, Rumble, Texas Roadhouse, Billing, Sweetgreen, and Paramount. We've got a lot of earnings to go through. Rocket Lab's the big one. That's the one that I own. I've got about 1,000 shares of Rocket Lab at around that 21.50 average. So Rocket Lab is the one that I'm going to be looking at. I'm probably not going to be streaming the call. I think Matt's going to be streaming the call. So for those that want to listen to the call, you guys can go to Matt's channel. But we will be covering all the other earnings that we have today. It is going to be literal madness. And we're going to see if these earnings can report a good number today. And you know what's really good is that, I mean, on a day like this, what better of a day could you get to report your earnings? What better of a day could you get to report your earnings? Are we at 120? Are we at 120? Hold on. Did we touch it? Did we touch it? I saw 119.92. That's my high. It's close. All right, it's close. All right, I can't leave yet. I can't leave yet. We're 10 cents away. We're 10 cents away. We are 10 cents away to see it. By the way, the website I'm using is earningshub.com for those that want to check it out. It's a great website to keep up with the calendar for earnings. 119.89, 11 cents away. When we get this close, she ends up breaking it. Pretty much happens every time. When we get this close, the momentum ends up taking us further. Palantir 120, 127,000 shares. 127,000 shares that we are waiting for 120. But yeah, today's going to be pretty crazy after the bell. We got some good momentum on this trade deal. If we get some more deals, especially with China over the weekend and the beginning of negotiations with them, who knows, man? Maybe all the pain we went through in April, maybe all the buying of the dips was for a moment where we can start to see that get rewarded in what hopefully will be the greatest bull market of our lifetimes. There's not many moments where you have technological shifts that change everything. We have the internet and now we have AI and we're all living through it right now. And hopefully we all get to be invested and have exposure to it to really see momentum over the next few years as we are in this AI revolution. 119.83 right now in Palantir. I still don't see 120. I did not see 120. There's still a big wall at 120. So I don't think we crossed over, even if some of your exchanges are showing that we did. I see 127,000 shares still stuck at 120. So still need a second to get above there. Is Matt joining? I think Matt's streaming Rock Lab on his own. So I'll cover the results. And then for anyone who wants to listen to the call, you can go to Matt's stream. But I think he's going to be covering the call with a bunch of his Rock Lab weekly people. 119.94 was the high. Yes. All right. We're at 119.95. There we go. We just broke that high. We got 5 cents, folks. 5 cents. Let's see if we can get there. Let's see if we can make it happen. Oh, there it is. There she is. We are back. We are there. 120 looks so sexy on Palantir. There you go, folks. 120 on Palantir. We have hit 120 once again. You know what? I was going to leave the stream, but I have a phone call to make. Let's see if he picks up. Let's see. I just got to tell him something, you know? I just got to tell him. I don't know if he's been keeping an eye on it, so. Dude, he must be so pissed.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail.
Okay, that means he's in a meeting right now. We gotta give a little call to one of our friends who cannot understand any of this happening right now. To be fair to him, he's right. The multiple's aggressive. The valuation's up there. I'm not quantitatively justifying the valuation where it at. So I get it. I'm just saying the market wants exposure. And so there you go. 123 or 120.3 on Palantir. She's not stopping, dude. She's not freaking stopping. Is she going to make me stay till 121? I got to go freaking do some stuff. 121, 42,000 shares. The 121 wall is actually a lot lower than the 120 wall. So, my goodness. My freaking goodness. Robin at 54.54 has not been able to hit 55 yet. There's about 70,000 shares waiting at 55. So maybe you can get some of that momentum right there. Bitcoin as well. 101, still holding 101 on Bitcoin. And then you got Palantir at 120.20. On Robin at 55, resistance again is 67,000 shares. 67,000 shares. Wow, dude. Hood up 9% and Palantir up freaking 8.75. Basically, both of them getting a monster day. And then where's HIMS? HIMS was down when Trump was speaking. HIMS is still down, which is not too bad given it's up 70% this week. SoFi is up about 2.69, and then Tessie 288. Hood and Palantir really the big movers of the day. Robinhood up 9%, Palantir up 8.77% here right now. All right, cool. That's it. I'll get out of here. Everyone go get some lunch. We'll be back at 3:45 p.m. Eastern. We have a big day on earnings. I got Rocket Lab. That's the one I'm looking at, but we'll be covering everything else. And we will be back in a few hours. Word of the day. Let's do that, and then we'll be done. Word of the day is premonish.
Premonish.
To warn beforehand. The darkening sky seemed to premonish that the rain wasn't far off. A good piano teacher won't just encourage students, but will also premonish them when their form starts to slip. If it means to warn beforehand, it looks like Trump premonished everybody about buying stocks today when he said, hey, if we get some trade deals, you better go out and buy some stocks. And the market seems to be reacting to that, at least right now as well. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys at 3:45 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be back for a pretty crazy earnings today after the bell. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.